"How lovely to see my beautiful wife's radiant smile," Derek said, raising his glass in a toast. I froze, my grin melting faster than ice on a hot summer day. Wife? Radiant? I hadn't smiled in months. I scanned the formally set dining table that I certainly hadn't helped prepare. His family surrounded us, beaming. My own kinspersons were notably absent. Not that it mattered. After all, this dinner was to celebrate Derek's latest achievement, a fancy promotion or award or something. I had stopped listening to the specifics a while ago. Derek rambled on, the perfect host entertaining his perfect guests. I stared at my plate, pushing the expertly cooked food around with my fork, my appetite gone. He gestured expansively, praising his own culinary skills. Culinary skills I never knew he had. In our year of marriage, I had never once seen that man step foot in a kitchen. I dropped my fork, the clatter muted by the embroidered tablecloth. "When exactly did you learn to cook a gourmet meal?" I asked pointedly. "Considering all your recent business trips, I wasn't aware you had time to take cooking classes." An uncomfortable silence blanketed the table. I ignored it, focusing on Derek's reaction. Shock, then annoyance flashed across his face. He quickly schooled his features behind his trademark plastic smile. "Leanna, what a sense of humor you have." His forced laugh sounded shrill and panicked to my ears. "Good. You know my presentations run late, so I often have working dinners with clients." I raised a single eyebrow. "And these clients also taught you to expertly fillet a sea bass?" His father leapt to Derek's defense. "Now, Leanna," Calvin admonished, "you should be grateful for Derek's tireless work ethic. It's provided you with this lifestyle. Designer clothes, luxury vehicles, extravagant vacations." I bristled, biting back the retort poised on my tongue. My so-called lifestyle was nothing more than a gilded cage paid for with Derek's blood money, or at least the money I had assumed was his. Now doubts needled my mind. Forcing a tight smile, I turned to Derek's mother and deftly changed the subject. As she prattled on about her garden club, my thoughts roiled. When had Derek become so skilled in deception? More importantly, what else had he lied about? I needed answers. After the endless evening finally ended, I cornered Derek in our opulent living room. Hands on hips, I confronted his dishonesty. "I want the truth," I demanded. "No more lies or omissions." Derek's facade fully shattered, his handsome face twisting spitefully. "You humiliated me tonight with your baseless accusations," he snarled. I fought to maintain my composure. "Then prove me wrong," I challenged. His lips flattened into a hard, angry line. Then he turned abruptly and stalked out without another word. I watched him go, my heart cracking. In his icy silence I found all the proof I needed. My picture-perfect marriage now lay exposed as a complete sham. I had twisted myself to fit the role of perfect wife, quitting my job, relinquishing my own dreams and desires in favor of supporting Derek's ambitions. All because I believed our love to be real. That belief had rooted me when loneliness crept in, when doubt whispered insidiously that something wasn't right. No more. I refused to continue living this lie of a marriage. If Derek wouldn't give me the truth willingly, then I would just have to discover it for myself. The silence in our cavernous apartment pressed down on me, cold and heavy like a leaden shroud. I wandered listlessly between the ornate yet impersonal rooms, absently trailing one hand along the smooth marble countertops and luxury furnishings. What was once filled with promise and possibility now echoed with loss and regret in the all-consuming emptiness. I paused before the window overlooking the glittering city lights, a view that once inspired awe but now only emphasized my isolation 30 stories up in this tower of steel and glass, like a modern-day Rapunzel trapped in her own illusion of happiness. When had that illusion shattered completely? When had the emotional chasm between Derek and I become so vast? The changes had crept slowly, distance growing insidiously like black mold behind walls, invisible yet toxic. His long hours at the office stretched into weekends away at conferences, which blurred into overseas business trips. The trips came frequently now, often at a moment's notice. "Emergency client meetings," Derek would claim in his smooth voice after I'd confront him about a last-minute canceled dinner or trip. His words slipped between us as insubstantial as smoke, their plausibility eroding a little more each time. Something sinister lurked behind his well-crafted excuses. I sensed it in my marrow. Derek hid a dark truth, one he desperately did not want discovered. Well, the jig was up. After that disastrous dinner, I refused to swallow his lies any longer. My phone vibrated in my pocket, jolting me from my spiraling thoughts. Expecting Derek's name, a puzzled frown pulled my lips down when I saw the caller ID. My mother was the one person more enamored of Derek than I once was, ruthlessly pushing me toward marriage. For her to call was highly unusual. I slid my thumb across the screen, lifting the phone to my ear. "Leanna, thank God you answered." Her shrill voice was devoid of any warmth or affection. Before I could reply, she ranted on. "How could you embarrass Derek like that in front of his family? And then make a dramatic scene by leaving early? Have you lost all sense of propriety?" I blinked hard against the sting of tears. Of course she would take Derek's side, even over her own daughters. I drew in a long breath. Perhaps if either of you bothered to include me in family events, I might know how to behave properly. Bitterness roughened my words. Or was I supposed to intuit the expectations telepathically? A contemptuous sniff rattled through the line. There are no expectations for absent wives too self-absorbed in their own little worlds to support their hard-working husbands. She paused, then continued in a vicious tone meant to demean. Then again, Derek deserved better. A woman not so lacking in beauty or talent. Her criticism pierced my fragile confidence with the precision of an arrow, threatening emotional hemorrhaging. Gasping raggedly, I stabbed at the red circle on screen, ending the call before she could further shred my self-worth. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. How dare she attack me when I was the injured party? Derek's deceit apparently spread beyond ruining my reputation with his family. He had turned my own mother against me. Red-hot fury kindled in my gut, the flames fueled by pain and betrayal. If Derek insisted upon war, then I would not hesitate to scorch the earth to root him out. I swiped angrily at my eyes. No more tears, no more weakness. I needed to know exactly what Derek plotted in the dark shadows. Time to hunt down an informant capable of illuminating his lies. I scrutinized the business card clutched in my sweaty palm, memorizing the embossed lettering. George McNamara, private investigator. My last resort gleamed like a beacon of hope in the murky confusion my life had become. With courage fueled by desperation, I pushed through the nondescript door into McNamara's office. The space matched my expectations. Dimly lit, dusty Venetian blinds half drawn, filing cabinet in the corner. Behind a battle-scarred desk sat a bear of a man, his keen azure eyes belying his otherwise rumpled appearance. McNamara studied me, bushy salt-and-pepper eyebrows raised. "Mrs. Dalton, I presume?" His gravelly voice reminded me of worn truck tires rolling over gravel. I nodded, perching on the edge of the visitor's chair. My words tumbled out in a rush as I detailed my suspicions, ending with a plea. "I know he's hiding something, but I can't prove it. Please, you have to help me find the truth." The private eye leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin as he listened intently, his piercing gaze cataloging everything from my strained tone to my disheveled appearance. I squirmed under his scrutiny, painfully aware of how I must look with lank hair, yesterday's smudged makeup, and the same yoga pants and baggy sweater I'd worn for 3 days now. Hardly the image of a successful businessman's wife. Finally, McNamara leaned forward, his expression deadly serious. "I'll take the case, but brace yourself. The truth isn't always pretty." Relief loosened the tight coils of anxiety in my chest. I just need to know one way or another. The not knowing is eating me alive. I meant that literally, as I couldn't remember the last time I managed to choke down more than a few bites of food or a few fitful hours of nightmare-plagued sleep. This had to end. McNamara promised daily updates as he launched immediately into his investigation. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in ages, as if fresh air finally circulated in my oppressed lungs. The sensation lasted mere hours, popped like an iridescent soap bubble by my trilling cell phone. Caller ID announced the impending pinprick. Calvin Dalton. Wonderful. "Leanna Ellen Dalton," my father-in-law thundered without preamble. "How dare you smear Derek's good name with your family by spreading such atrocious lies? He is the most devoted, hard-working husband a woman could dream of having. That you fail to adequately support him is your deficiency, not his." Calvin ranted on as I sat stunned, his accusations striking me like physical blows. At last, the initial shock wore off, replaced by smoldering anger and a deep sense of betrayal. Derek continued spinning his web of lies, further undermining me with my own family. This time he had gone too far. I would not let him impugn my character, so my reputation lay in tatters while he played the martyr. "That is enough," I shouted into the phone, startling Calvin to silence. "The only one spreading lies is your precious son. Do not call me again with your misguided vitriol, because I will not listen to another word against my good name." I violently stabbed at the red icon on my phone screen, ending the call with a defiant jab. Blood roared in my ears and my breath came in ragged pants, fury simmering my blood. Derek insisted on playing dirty by ruining my family relationships? Fine. Then it was past time I fight back on his level. No more cowering in corners for me. I strode up the walkway lined with precisely trimmed box hedges to the sprawling Dalton family mansion, chin lifted with moxie mostly feigned. Time to face the lion's den. When Calvin phoned yesterday, insisting my presence was mandatory at some family milestone for Derek's sister Diana, I knew it for the ambush it was. Another opportunity for the Daltons to barrage me with condemnation for daring to sully their golden child's good reputation. Well, I refused to be the only target remaining in this vicious battle. Tonight, their famed perfect family dynamic would finally crack and splinter under the weight of truth too long suppressed. I just prayed my backbone would hold steady under their inevitable vitriol. Squaring my shoulders as if preparing for battle, I pressed the ornate doorbell. Calvin himself flung open the immense oak door, his usual genial smile replaced by a patronizing smirk. "Leanna, so glad you could join us tonight." The sarcasm dripped from each word like venom. "Right this way." He ushered me not into the house's soaring foyer but along the covered porch toward the rear veranda. Curious family members peered through curtained windows as we passed. My cheeks flamed, but I refused to show any weakness, spine rigid, and gaze focused straight ahead. We stepped through wide French doors onto the expansive flagstone patio swarmed with Dalton relatives under twinkle lights, like fireflies winking merrily in counterpoint to the building tension crackling through the space. Calvin guided me to the outdoor living area beside a massive stone fireplace where Derek perched on a leather sofa, every inch the conquering hero. "Leanna decided to grace us with her presence after all," Calvin proclaimed loudly with hand gestures as if presenting a zoo animal. "Shall we allow her a chance to defend her reprehensible behavior?" A tight smile stretched my lips, though fury blazed in my eyes. So that was their play then. Fine by me. I cleared my throat delicately, then launched into my counterattack. "Actually, Calvin, I believe it is your son who owes everyone here an explanation." Gasps rippled through the crowd, but I pressed on recklessly. "The only behavior I'm guilty of is being foolish enough to trust a man apparently devoid of integrity." Murmurs rose as all eyes pivoted to Derek, still lounging arrogantly on the couch, one ankle propped casually atop the opposite knee. Though tension bracketed his mouth, he appeared nonplussed. "And pray tell, what lapse in integrity have I displayed?" Derek snapped caustically. "Working hard to support my wife so she may spend her days lunching and shopping to her heart's content?" Anger flared. Did he truly fail to comprehend the depth of his betrayal? I trembled with suppressed rage. "Do not attempt to twist facts with your distorted view of reality." My voice rang clearly in the sudden silence. "You know precisely what I reference. The days and nights you claimed were filled with important meetings while you deliberately concealed your true activities." I paused, pinning him with an unrelenting stare. "Who exactly have you been frequenting that condo on Park Avenue with Derek, and why have you purposefully hidden the truth from me?" The assembled family members inhaled their shock in unison. Eyes widened, shifted back to Derek. After an extended tense moment, my mother-in-law Millie broke the ringing quiet. "Well, how about a nice family picture?" Her falsely bright tone belied the panic in her eyes as the family illusion of perfection rapidly unraveled at the seams. I slid behind the wheel of my slate-gray Acura, pulse thrumming with exhilaration. Confronting Derek and his family's blindness to his faults filled me with crackling energy despite the sting of burns from their acidic contempt. However, my bravado shriveled when faced with the monumental task still ahead, proving Derek's infidelity. I twisted the key in the ignition, Time to do some detective work of my own. Pulling from the driveway, I headed toward Derek's sleek downtown office building, making good time in the sparse Sunday evening traffic. I eased into a spot in the shadowed parking garage, killing the lights but leaving the engine idling. Now to see if my wayward husband planned on logging weekend overtime tonight as well. I didn't have long to wait before a cherry-red Jaguar roared up to the executive parking section in the corner. I straightened in my seat, straining to confirm the driver's identity in the intermittent fluorescent lighting. Please let instincts be correct just this once. Then the interior flared to life as he opened the door and leaned in to gather his briefcase. Jackpot! My pulse leapt as Derek's handsome face was briefly illuminated. I watched him breeze inside, without glancing around like a man with a clear purpose. Where could he possibly be going this late on a Sunday? The offices stood dark and deserted on weekends, except perhaps for a clandestine rendezvous with that mystery woman I guessed awaited somewhere within. Drumming my fingers impatiently on the steering wheel, I weighed options: confront Derek directly and risk him slipping away, or trail him covertly to uncover the sordid truth. Given his talent for manipulation, I decided surveillance was my smartest, if not exactly noblest, choice. If I approached without concrete proof, he would undoubtedly twist scenarios and cast doubts until ending up the aggrieved innocent. Well, not this time, buddy. I cranked my engine and crept from the garage, catching sight of Derek's Jag pulling smoothly into traffic. Keeping a few vehicles between us, I shadowed him to an upscale condo tower 10 minutes away. Of course, the infamous Park Avenue property I had confronted him about just yesterday. At least now I knew for certain his denial was yet another bald-faced lie woven with practiced ease. No innocent reason existed for Derek to frequent an expensive condo clearly intended for clandestine affairs. I watched him swagger inside without a backwards glance. The private investigator I hired earlier this week likely knew all the specifics: who owned the property, how often Derek visited, and most importantly, who he met there. I just had to be patient and maintain surveillance until I received the PI's condemning report. Still, curiosity needled me. Who was worth risking his marriage and reputation over? Did Derek sneak off for secret romantic trysts with his assistant, a stranger from a seedy website for married affairs? Bile burned the back of my throat. Whoever she was, one thing seemed certain: this likely wasn't her first tango with a married man. Clearly an experienced predator. For now, I had seen enough. Starting my car, I pointed it back toward the privacy of my own apartment where I could call McNamara. Surely, he already possessed evidence revealing the depth of Derek's tangled web of lies and betrayal. I only hoped revealing that treachery to his beloved family would finally splinter Derek's picture-perfect illusions into jagged shards too sharp to repair. My soon-to-be ex-husband was overdue for a brutal wake-up call. I strode purposely into the lavishly decorated ballroom, chin lifted with confidence I didn't entirely feel. Time for the main event, publicly exposing Derek's duplicity to his family's elite social circle. I paused in the double doorway, scanning the room until I spotted my target holding court in the center of a sycophantic knot of businessmen. Gotcha. Adjusting my new designer cocktail dress, I glided through the room straight toward Derek, smiling toothily. The wolf entering the den of lions. Disengaging from his group with a puzzled frown, Derek moved to intercept me. "Leanna, what are you doing here?" I blinked innocently, attending my husband's important event just as a supportive spouse should. Wariness crept into his expression as his mouth tightened. Clearly he suspected brewing trouble. Good instincts. We faced off silently in the middle of the ornate room, tension charging the atmosphere like gathering thunderclouds. I relished stretching this moment, making Derek squirm. "Is that why you're wearing a sexy new dress and your hair styled?" He made an effort to keep his tone neutral, but his darting eyes betrayed unease. "Of course. I'm playing the glamorous wife tonight since your little mistress couldn't attend." My smile turned razor sharp. Gotcha. Derek actually paled beneath his artfully stubbled beard. "Leanna, I don't know what nonsense you're spewing now, but clearly you're confused. Oh, let's dispense with the lies for once." My voice rang out clearly in the sudden hush radiating through the room as all eyes pivoted toward us, standing in the center of the ornate space. I welcomed the rapt audience for Derek's imminent humiliation. Pulling a plain manila envelope from my small clutch with a dramatic flourish, I withdrew an 8x10 photograph capturing Derek in a passionate embrace with a gorgeous brunette, locked in a deep kiss as they entered an apartment building. His extravagant condo. This looks like all the proof anyone needs of your flagrant infidelity. I held up the incriminating evidence with a flourish as horrified gasps echoed. Derek lunged unsuccessfully to grab the photo. Gotcha again. Derek visibly crumbled before my eyes, impressive facade eroding. Gone was the urbane businessman's schmoozing associates, leaving a pathetically crushed man in an overpriced suit. Calvin shoved through the stunned onlookers, bravado weakened by distress. Son, this can't possibly be true. Explain yourself. Behind him, Derek's mother Millie dissolved into tearful hysterics, supported by her best friend Lorraine. Derek just stood mute, shoulders slumped and eyes clouded with despair. In that moment, he resembled a lost little boy more than a captain of industry. I recognized divorce's costly price, stamped raw across his face, his family standing in tattered ruins alongside our destroyed marriage. Get out! Calvin thundered, face mottled purple with rage as he pointed a rigid finger toward the exit. Don't expect sympathy or support from any of us after this ultimate betrayal. Derek cringed, nodding sadly before stumbling away on legs noticeably unsteady. The room unleashed a chaotic maelstrom of accusatory voices and racking sobs. I held myself tall amongst the debris, finally vindicated. My husband's spectacle of lies had collapsed like the House of Usher under the weight of truth. Now to see if its destruction freed me to rebuild my own life atop the rubble. I eased my sleek sedan against the curb half a block down from the imposing Dalton family manor, eyeing the flurry of activity outside the impressive home. The day after my nuclear detonation of Derek's established world order at the gala, and still the fallout continued. My lips quirked. Several days of relentless phone calls to the family matriarch finally resulted in this meeting with Millie. Time to find out whether the scales had fallen from her eyes yet regarding her fraudulent son's battered halo. My odds looked hopeful, judging by the catering vans and carpet cleaners steadily arriving, clearly preparing for my prodigal return to the family fold. I rummaged in my designer purse until fingers closed around cool metal. Extracting a heavy brass key, I rubbed my thumb across the ornate D embossed on the bow. The key to the kingdom, well, at least access to the Dalton family lair. A peace offering presented years ago by Millie herself when I first married her precious only son. "Welcome to the family, sweetheart," she had exclaimed while pressing the weighty token into my palm. Then she pulled me into a warm, jasmine-scented hug that felt like coming home. I clung to that tender gesture now like a talisman, hoping enough maternal love lingered to bridge chasms torn wide by betrayal. After one last steadying breath, I slipped from the safety of my vehicle and clicked steadily up the paved walkway in my highest confidence-boosting heels. Time to face the lion's den. I pressed the brass key home, then eased the towering oak door open. "Millie?" I called tentatively. "It's Leanna." A slender blonde whirlwind exploded from a side parlor, fielding me in a ferocious embrace redolent in Chanel No. 5. "Leanna, my beautiful girl," Millie chirped brightly. "We have so much catching up to do." Over steaming mugs of Earl Grey poured from heirloom china, whole stories spilled out in a cathartic rush. Of Derek's chronic detachment from his wife, the insidious isolation as he deliberately estranged me from family, his pathological lies spinning fictions until no truth remained. I knew something lurked beneath the surface, but I never imagined betrayal this cruel. Millie's weary eyes swam with fresh tears even now. My own child capable of such calculated deception, and toward those he supposedly loved. I reached across the polished mahogany table to grasp her graceful hands in mine. Derek alone owns responsibility for trading real relationships for superficial gain. I gentled my voice, adding with soft fervency, "But you and I finding understanding today that finally feels like hope rising from the ashes." A watery yet true smile graced Millie's lips for the first time since I arrived. "Oh, Leanna, of course I still love you like a daughter. We women must stick together now to heal these wounds." Sudden resolve hardened her delicate jawline, starting by cutting off Derek and his harlots completely. I blinked in surprise. Does this mean? Millie nodded vehemently. You were right confronting Derek's cheating publicly at the gala. His betrayal can't be concealed and forgiven. I should know. She broke off suddenly, waving one manicured hand as if swatting the past aside. Regardless, there must be consequences for such deception. I probed cautiously. Like withdrawing financial support so he can't continue living the high life with his mistress? A ruthless glint sparked in Millie's eyes. Exactly. Let the flashy leech pay his own bills for a change instead of tapping our accounts. Without money to burn, his bedazzled bimbo won't stick around anyway. She shrugged delicately. Serves him right for upending our entire family with his lies. For the first time since confronting Derek, bright hope pierced my heart. His own mother finally grasped the scope of his cruelty and now aligned firmly by my side. Together we would ensure Derek never destroyed an innocent woman again. Justice would be done. I rolled over with a luxuriant stretch, sunbeams tickling my face filtered softly through gauzy curtains. A glance at the clock confirmed I had indulged in a delightfully decadent mid-morning lie-in, without any obligations dragging me from the cozy nest of down-stuffed comforters. I could definitely become accustomed to leisurely mornings like this. Swinging my legs out of bed, I padded across artfully weathered hardwood floors and thick Turkish rugs to fling wide the curtains framing glass doors overlooking downtown. Beautiful morning sunshine glinted off skyscraper windows outside my panoramic penthouse view. I sighed happily. This new condo was everything my old place had not been. Bright, airy, and filled with possibility, just like this next chapter of my life. A knock interrupted my contented musings. I tugged a satin robe over my camisole pajamas and hurried to greet my guest. Swinging the door wide, I welcomed the aromas of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries. Good morning, gorgeous. Millie bustled in, bearing breakfast. I thought we could celebrate over this lovely spread from that French patisserie you adore. Soon we relaxed together on the balcony, fueling girl talk with lattes and croissants while cawing seagulls wheeled over the skyline. I confessed the truth, I could barely acknowledge myself these past painful years. I knew in my core something was wrong almost from the beginning, I admitted quietly, eyes downcast. I felt Derek's emotional distance even during our honeymoon. Millie squeezed my hand supportively. Yet you persevered because you're resilient and caring by nature. Her tone turned fierce. But my son didn't deserve your beautiful spirit. He's proven completely unworthy. I brushed crumbs off my hands, appetite fading. If only I had trusted my instincts instead of making excuses. Darling, stop punishing yourself. Hindsight brings clarity about red flags, but the present grants opportunity. Millie took my hands firmly, compelling my gaze to hers, glowing with conviction. Now you're free to seek someone who truly cherishes you. I offered a tremulous smile, encouraged by her staunch validation. My phone chirped brightly. Glancing at the screen, my pulse quickened, seeing my lawyer's name. I answered immediately. Leanna Dalton speaking? Yes? Millie watched closely as I began grinning wildly. That's wonderful news. Thank you for all your dedicated hard work securing this outcome. I disconnected the call and victoriously pumped both fists overhead. My divorce is finalized at last. The judge approved my request given Derek's infidelity, and I drew out the dramatic moment. I received 75% of all marital assets. Millie cheered loudly, grabbing my hands as we danced an impromptu jig. Hallelujah! That philandering snake got his financial comeuppance, and you, my resourceful dear, are awarded means to make a fresh start on your own terms. I threw my arms around Millie, hugging her tightly with joyful abandon. Despite heartbreak and bitter struggles, I had reclaimed independence and self-respect by ultimately trusting my inner wisdom. Never again would any man devalue my worth or make me question my sanity. From now on, I shone as brightly as the blazing sunrise, lighting my path to a beautiful life of my own design. The future unfurled, filled with radiant possibility and hope.
Well, well, it appears that our less educated daughter-in-law, the unremarkable Plain Jane, is about to grace us with her singing. Come on, step onto the stage, you ugly duckling, my mother-in-law sneered. It was my sister-in-law's wedding reception. Anna was coerced into performing a solo, as was customary whenever my mother-in-law found an opportunity to belittle me. Her audacity to humiliate me, even on such a joyous occasion as my sister-in-law's wedding, was beyond my comprehension. What's taking so long? Hurried up. She's getting impatient. Her voice hardened. Okay then. I will. Excuse me. I stood up from my seat and slowly made my way towards the stage. I'm Erica, 33 years old, living with my 4-year-old daughter Janice and my husband Paul, who's the same age as me. We're in our 8th year of marriage. Orphaned as a child, I was raised by my grandparents but chose to be independent, dropping out of high school to work at a local factory. Paul and I reconnected at a high school reunion when we were 21, hit it off, and started dating. 3 years after Paul graduated from university, we got married. Since then, I've been supporting him, managing our household chores, and raising our daughter while working part-time. Mom, teach me how to sing. Janice has been asking me recently. Neither Paul nor I had any intention of forcing music onto her, but I have a background in music, having been the president of the choir club in high school. I still love singing and even take voice training lessons as a hobby. Janice developed an interest in music naturally, and I hope that one day we can perform together with Paul's music. Returning home 3 days later, my mother-in-law called, resuming her habit of belittling me since she discovered I dropped out of high school. She often showered me with insults, criticizing my abilities and family background. She wasn't my favorite person. Hello, is Janice there right now? My mother-in-law asked. I'm sorry, she's at voice training right now. She's not home, I replied, realizing I had let something slip, but it was too late. Why didn't you tell me before letting her attend such things? You really don't think things through. I'll teach her, my mother-in-law insisted. Despite her accomplished musical background, she tended to take a condescending tone when it came to music and education. She doted on our daughter but might inadvertently push her away if she followed the same strict teaching approach she used on Paul and his sister in the past. Mother-in-law, I appreciate your offer, but I want Janice to have her freedom in this. Even if you say that, it's really up to Janice whether she wants to continue or not. I can't force her to quit. I'm sure it would be much better if I taught her. My mother-in-law abruptly ended the call. 3 months passed, and I'd almost forgotten about the incident when my mother-in-law decided to visit our home. It's been a while, hasn't it? Oh, how's Janice been doing? She inquired, likely happy to see her granddaughter after such a long time. As soon as she stepped into our home, she immediately scooped Janice into her arms, barely greeting us. It just so happened that Janice had the day off from her voice training class, and the whole family was at home. Granny, I've become good at singing, Janice exclaimed, boasting to her grandmother. Really? Could you sing something for me then? My mother-in-law asked. I intervened, worried about what my mother-in-law might say to Janice. How about we eat first before we hear her sing? It's lunchtime after all, I suggested. Don't interrupt when she's about to sing for me. My mother-in-law dismissed my suggestion. I'm sorry, Janice dear. Can you sing for me? My mother-in-law asked. Hearing her request, Janice began to sing. From the perspective of a mother-in-law who graduated as the valedictorian of a music conservatory, my daughter's singing must have sounded rather clumsy. I had a sinking feeling inside me, worried that my daughter might receive some snide remarks from her. However, my mother-in-law applauded and praised my daughter, saying, You did well. You've practiced a lot. Far from making any sarcastic comments, she thanked her grandmother, seeming happy to be praised. I sighed in relief, thinking that even my strict mother-in-law wouldn't make snide remarks to her granddaughter. I thought Mom might say something. I was a little worried. Paul whispered to me with a look of relief on his face. Nothing particular happened after that, but as the evening came, I realized that Janice had fallen asleep. Excuse me, mother-in-law. Since Janice fell asleep, I'm going to take her to her room, I announced, picking up Janice and carrying her to her bedroom. After putting my daughter to bed, I returned to the living room. As soon as I re-entered, my mother-in-law said to me, Didn't you think that Janice's singing today was terrible, Erica? It's a waste of money to let her go to a class that can only teach her to that level. I'll teach her myself. I confronted Paul as anger welled up within me. Wait a minute, isn't that a bit too selfish? What can we do when it comes to music? She's much better than me, and it's a fact that I got better by being taught by her, Paul reasoned. About 5 minutes of silence followed, and it was Paul who gave in and said, "All right, Mom, go ahead and teach Janice to sing for a while." Hearing those unbelievable words from Paul's mouth, my mind went blank. Is this some kind of joke? Won't they care how Janice feels? After all, she has been so happy to be interested in music. What if Janice hates music because she's taught so strictly by her grandmother? I was so angry that I felt like waking up Janice right at that moment and leaving the house with her. So I guess it means Janice is quitting the voice training class, as I said, right? My mother-in-law, with a triumphant look on her face, asked Paul and me. All right, but remember, this is not a music conservatory, so please absolutely do not do anything that Janice would dislike. I know that you know I'm not uneducated like you, I retorted, stating what I had to say, knowing she'd never back off, and I let her go home for the day. That night, my husband apologized for his mother's behavior, but I did not even want to see his face. I ignored him and went to bed. The next morning, I told my daughter Janice, from today, instead of going to the voice training class, let's have Grandma teach you to sing here at home, all right? When she heard it, she looked very sad but said nothing and just nodded. I apologized, seeing her like that. Then, come noon, my mother-in-law arrived at our home. Janice, starting today, Grandma is going to teach you to sing even better, she said to my daughter with a smile. No sooner had the lesson started than my mother-in-law's teaching style became more and more strict. Within an hour, she criticized Janice harshly, demanding perfection. You're wrong. You're making the same mistake in the same place. Do it again. I knew it would turn out like this. Mother-in-law, this isn't what we agreed to, is it? Could you be a bit gentler? What are you talking about? I'm being gentle. Don't interfere. Why don't you quietly do some housework that you can hardly handle? 4 hours passed, and at last, my mother-in-law's lesson ended. Well, see you tomorrow. Remember to practice what we did today, she left, seemingly pleased with herself. If I'm going to get yelled at this much, I don't want to sing anymore, seated in her chair, Janice said to me. I harbored an intense hatred for my mother-in-law, taking away what my daughter enjoyed and only caring about her own satisfaction. This cannot go on. I won't let my mother-in-law have her way. Her singing lessons continued in the days that followed. However, after about a week, Janice told me, I don't want Grandma to teach me anymore. I don't want to sing. Given my mother-in-law's way of teaching, I thought it couldn't be helped. You don't have to force yourself. If you want to quit, that's okay too. So you don't want to go back to the voice training class. It was something she had started because she wanted to, and I, for my part, wanted her to continue. So I asked her that. If it's that class, it seemed that Janice hadn't come to hate singing itself. It appeared that the harsh words from her grandmother and the lack of praise, even when she felt she did well, were making it unenjoyable for her. Why don't you go back to your voice training lessons and give it another shot? I asked Janice, and as if she hadn't been upset moments before, she perked up and nodded enthusiastically. So I'm sorry to say this to you, grandmother, but from tomorrow, Janice will be returning to her original voice training classes. The next day arrived. I relayed Janice's feelings to her grandmother over the phone. How can she whine about giving up after just a week? Isn't it your fault for raising such a weak-minded child? My mother-in-law exclaimed. I retorted, well, it might be, but even though you graduated top of your class from a prestigious music college, it seems that's the only way you know how to teach. Janice told me that she preferred her voice training teacher. Fussing and fuming, my mother-in-law continued, but I ignored her and hung up. Whether she was top of her class or not, it was quite satisfying that her own teaching method had led to her being disliked by her granddaughter, who preferred her voice training teacher. After that, the visits from the grandmother ceased. I spoken to your mother and told her it was okay if she didn't come to teach anymore. Janice said she didn't want it anymore either. I also feel like I've done something unforgivable to Janice. Back in the day, my mother was very strict with me about music, so I couldn't say anything. But I thought she wouldn't be so harsh on her granddaughter. I'm really sorry. I confessed to my husband Paul that night. When I relayed this to him, he seemed deeply regretful and apologized. I was so angry when Paul suggested quitting Janice's voice training class and having the grandmother teach her. I almost felt like punching him, but fortunately, Janice didn't come to hate music, so I decided to forgive him. 2 weeks later, Paul said, "My sister is getting married in a month, and she asks us to perform. I had never performed at someone else's wedding before. What kind of performance is she expecting?" I was planning to bring a few people from my band and do a small concert, but my sister really wants you and my mother to sing as well. Hearing that the grandmother would also be performing, I reluctantly accepted Paul's suggestion. "So, does that mean I'll be singing with your mother?" "Well, yeah, that's how it seems." Singing with my mother-in-law of all people, I wondered if it would be all right. But if I happened to sing better than her at this performance, I wondered what she'll say. I started practicing the very next day, but there was no sign of my mother-in-law practicing at all. "Mother, aren't you going to practice?" "I'm fine. I'm much better than you, even without practicing. After all, practice is something that people like you, who are not very good, need to do." I tried asking because I was curious, but the only response from my mother-in-law was sarcasm. I decided it was a waste of time to engage with her and focused on my own preparations. After we decided what song to perform, I also increased the frequency of my voice training lessons. I was sick of being ridiculed by my mother-in-law, and above all, I was anxious about performing in public after such a long time without proper training. On the day of my sister-in-law's wedding, the ceremony went smoothly, and the time for the entertainment had finally come. First, my husband Paul took the stage and began to play his music. As expected, given he plays regularly, he was confident and exuded an elegant aura. I was utterly mesmerized by Paul's performance. "I'm not feeling well today. Could you sing on your own?" Then, out of the blue, my mother-in-law told me to sing solo. "What? That's so sudden. It's not fair." "Well, there's nothing we can do about it." "Or what? Are you too embarrassed to sing in front of others because you're uneducated and ugly?" She said this without a hint of remorse. "Okay, I know it. She's doing this on purpose," I thought and decided to retort. "Being uneducated and ugly. I've practiced hard, so I won't be embarrassed singing in front of others. I asked you several times if you needed to practice, but you showed no signs of doing so." Could it be that you're actually a terrible singer?" "That's not true." My mother-in-law raised her voice in response to my question. The people around us began to stir, wondering what was going on. "Ah, sorry. It's nothing." I got up from my seat, apologized to those around me, and then pressed my mother-in-law further. "Graduating as valedictorian from the music college, you sure talk big about teaching others, huh? Are you running away because you're embarrassed to sing with me since I'm better?" I whispered this in her ear. "What did you say? There's no way that's true. If I sing with a low-educated, ugly person like you, it would only throw me off. Didn't your parents teach you that you and your parents are truly incompetent?" She disparaged me as being uneducated and ugly and even insulted my parents in front of everyone. Embarrassed and angry, I wanted to leave right at that moment, but if I ran away now, it would just make her happy. "What are you doing just sitting there? Hurry up and go." "Okay then, I will." "Excuse me." Just as Paul's performance ended, I took his place on stage. I was supposed to sing with my mother-in-law, but due to her not feeling well, I would be singing solo. Instead of the song I was supposed to sing with her, I chose an opera song I used to sing a lot when I was competitive, an aria from The Marriage of Figaro. And so, I began to sing. At that moment, perhaps due to the vocal training I had done, my condition was excellent. and I was able to produce the most beautiful vibrato I'd ever achieved. It was amazing. The audience was mesmerized by my singing, saying things like, "Wow, her voice is incredible," and "Is she a professional?" When I finished singing my song without any hitches, the audience gave me a standing ovation, showering me with thunderous applause. Congrats on your wedding, sister-in-law. You know, I used to be the choir leader in high school. It's been a few years since I last sang in front of an audience, so I was a bit nervous. How did I do? Thanks so much for listening. After making this statement, I returned to my seat, and my daughter, all starry-eyed, pleaded, "Mom, your voice was so beautiful. Can you teach me next time?" Witnessing this, my mother-in-law, with her jealousy on full display, said in a huff, anyone can sing like that. Don't get ahead of yourself, continuing to belittle my singing." Just as I thought the entertainment segment was over, my sister-in-law unexpectedly said, "Mother-in-law, and you should sing too." Words that I didn't expect came out from my sister-in-law. My mother-in-law was taken aback and looked at her daughter in confusion, asking me, "I've never heard you sing, Mom, and since you taught me so much about music when I was young, I'd really love to hear you sing," my sister-in-law expressed with pure honesty. The attendees chimed in, "Mother-in-law, you should definitely sing." Words had gotten around that my mother-in-law was a top graduate from a prestigious music school, and the crowd grew increasingly excited for her performance, creating an atmosphere where she felt she had to sing. "Well, with all this, I guess you have to sing now, don't you?" I did not hesitate to add, "So, all right. If you insist," she responded, heading to the stage. The moment my mother-in-law took the stage, the energy in the room peaked. But as she began to sing, such murmurs could be heard throughout the crowd. "Wait, no way. I might even be a better singer." She must have heard them as well. My mother-in-law's voice did seem off, but even accounting for that, her singing was dreadful. She always criticized others for their singing, but her pitch was all over the place. Honestly, I felt I was still a better singer. The atmosphere grew awkward as her performance ended. Unlike when I sang, the venue was filled with a cold atmosphere, and the applause was sparse. Everyone acted as if they'd seen something they shouldn't have, as if her turn had never happened. Upon returning to our table, my mother-in-law, her face flushed red, shouted at me, "That's why I didn't want to sing. If you had sung properly, my daughter wouldn't have asked me to do this," she said to me with such an angry tone. But I didn't understand why my sister-in-law asked her mother to sing. It seemed to me that she genuinely wanted the wedding to be blessed by the voice of her mother, who had been sternly teaching her about music since her childhood. "Do you think so? To me, it seems she genuinely wanted you to sing." I shared my honest thoughts with my mother-in-law. "No way. I'm sure she knew I'm bad at singing, and this is her way of embarrassing me." I was utterly astonished at her response. She had always criticized others' music and performances, yet she herself didn't want to sing in public because she's bad at it. She never hesitates to complain about others' music, but she is like, "I don't accept complaints, although I'm a bad singer myself." Such a self-centered attitude won't be accepted. My daughter Janice might have her newfound love for music crushed by her grandmother. I could no longer bear my mother-in-law's attitude. So, a person who studied at a prestigious music school and criticizes others' music is just doing so because she can only sing this badly. But mother-in-law, isn't it great? You are able to sing alone without having to sing with a terrible singer like me. I responded to my mother-in-law with a sarcastic tone. "How dare you say that? It's your fault that I had to embarrass myself. It's not nice to say that in front of your daughter. I'm sure she's satisfied hearing her mother singing." As I spoke these words, my mother-in-law fell silent. There was a stir amongst those who'd heard what I had said to my mother-in-law, but other than that, the ceremony went on smoothly and ended without any problems. 2 days after the ceremony, my mother-in-law stormed into our house. "I just can't let it go. I want you to apologize for what had happened." I was surprised by her sudden visit, but retorted, What exactly am I supposed to apologize for? I wasn't aware that your singing was that bad. Instead, I think you owe us an apology. What do you mean? I have absolutely nothing to apologize for. It's your fault I was forced to sing that song I hated and embarrass myself. No, not to me, to Janice, because of you. Janice almost came to hate the music that she had started to enjoy. Even though you graduated from a prestigious music school, why would you torment a child who has developed an interest in music just because things didn't go your way? Is that what you learned from your music school? I haven't received any musical training from you, yet I was able to sing at the reception and even received applause. How about you, mother-in-law? Shall I give you some singing lessons? I'll teach you thoroughly. My mother-in-law was speechless hearing what I said. If you have nothing else to discuss, please leave. I won't tolerate you interfering with our daughter or my husband's music anymore. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law left our home without another word. Her shoulders slumped into defeat. I felt a sense of satisfaction from being able to retaliate so fiercely in her area of expertise, music. It was indeed worth continuing my voice training since my youth. Without the voice training, I might not have been able to receive such applause at my sister-in-law's wedding reception. I wonder how my mother-in-law, who has always boasted about graduating top of her class from a prestigious music school, felt being scolded this way by someone like me who only has a high school diploma and was just a choir member. To be honest, I felt a sense of poetic justice towards my mother-in-law. I thought, serves her right. She shouldn't act so haughty anymore. It's been a month since the wedding ceremony of my sister-in-law, and now my mother-in-law occasionally visits our house, but she doesn't complain about my daughter's singing anymore. I actually didn't mind my mother-in-law visiting since she did not say anything about music anymore. My daughter Janice, who has improved a lot in her singing recently, is challenging a slightly difficult song given as an assignment in her class. "Mom, this song is hard, but I'll try to sing it beautifully," she declared, practicing enthusiastically. "That's great. You do your best. You'll definitely do well." Although I love singing, don't know much about the technical aspects, so I had no idea what was difficult about the song. But seeing my daughter working so hard, that's all I could say. On that day, my mother-in-law, who happened to be visiting our house, observed the interaction between me and Janice and said, "Erica, this song is not something you can handle by just doing your best. Janice, listen well. You should do it like this." It was incredibly kind and patient of her, which was unimaginable given how she used to be, to explain until Janice understood. "Oh, thank you, Grandma. It's easier to sing now," Janice said as she listened intently to her grandmother's advice, working hard to master her assignment. "Erica, I used to look down on everyone doing music without graduating from a music college. But after meeting someone like you who can sing so beautifully without a music degree, I changed my mind. After all, we should enjoy music. Could you teach me to sing next time?" My mother-in-law said that looking at Janice singing. I was surprised to hear such a thing all of a sudden, but I'm sure the sarcastic comment I made after my sister-in-law's wedding had its effect. "My lessons are tough, you know. I grant this," I replied to my mother-in-law. "Oh, I won't do anything horrible anymore. I feel sorry for Paul too, although it's too late now. But if you're going to be tough, Erica, I'm prepared." After hearing that from my mother-in-law, I felt assured that she won't say anything about her music anymore. Although a lot had happened, the tension between my mother-in-law and me eased off, and since then, we've often gone to karaoke together, becoming close enough to sing together. I hope that one day when Janice becomes even better at singing, the four of us, me, Paul, Janice, and my mother-in-law, can have a fun jam session. You've inherited over $3 million, right? We've already started constructing a duplex for us to live together. I've even included the kitchen of my dreams, my mother-in-law says in a tone that's almost dreamy. I've quit my job. I'm planning to start a business with the inheritance that Ashley has received. My husband announces, looking oddly pleased. Wait a minute, I've told you I haven't received any inheritance yet, right? You've quit your job, and you're building a duplex. What's happening? Don't lie. It's clear you've inherited. How about we take a trip before the house gets built? How about Hawaii? My father-in-law chimes in, adding to the growing confusion with my husband and my mother-in-law. What on earth are these people thinking? They want to use the precious inheritance I received from my mother and spend it on whatever they please. Even though I was filled with rage, I didn't know what to do. The story goes back a few months ago. My name is Ashley. I'm 38 years old and work as a high school teacher. I married David, an office worker who is 2 years older than me, 12 years ago. Soon after we got married, our only daughter Julie was born, and since then, my days have been filled with work and child rearing. Today is the day I'm visiting my hospitalized mother with my daughter. Oh, Grandma, it's been a while. Well, Julie, welcome. My mother lies in her bed, lovingly stroking Julie's hair. Her hand is noticeably thinner, and her complexion looks poor. Next to my mother's bed stands a middle-aged man wearing glasses and a suit. As I nod towards him, he returns the nod and leaves the room. Mom, who is that man? Just an acquaintance. Don't worry about it. More importantly, Ashley, are you still doing well? And David, is he well? My mother's eyes, a shade close to blue, sparkle softly as she smiles. She met my father, who ran an import-export business overseas and came to the U.S. as his bride. Raising a child in a foreign country must have been hard, but my mother and father worked together to bring me up. One of the reasons I am able to work as a teacher today is because my mother taught me many things since I was small. I am deeply grateful to my parents who raised me with love in a wealthy family. After my father passed away a few years ago, my mother, now alone, fell ill and was hospitalized. She transferred the business to a relative, and now she spends her remaining days quietly in the hospital. I'm fine, Mom. Is there anything you need? Just having you and Julie come to see me is more than enough. After having such a conversation and spending a good amount of time talking with my mother, Julie, and I headed home. Julie talks to my mother about things that happened at school and the book she has recently read. She's at that tricky age of 10, but our relationship is good. Even if I take away my parental bias, I think she is a bright and honest child who is growing up well. We're home. Oh, welcome back. How's my mother-in-law doing? David asks as he greets us. Mom is as usual. How about you? Your seminar, was it? Oh, I heard some good stuff. Looking forward to the next one. Recently, my husband has been attending seminars on quitting his job and starting a side business. He must want more money, but the company he works for is not top tier. It's not bad, and with my salary, we are doing just fine. I find it distasteful when he is so greedy for money, which I suppose he gets from his parents. Ever since we got married, I've been put off by his parents' excessive stinginess and their habit of begging for small amounts of money whenever we see them, so I've been keeping my distance. They've never given Julie any Christmas gifts. Fortunately, my in-laws live far away, so we don't have to interact much, and my husband does well with household chores, so I guess it's okay. As long as I have my mother, my husband, Julie, and our modest but ordinary life, I'm content. Then one day, I got a call from the hospital. My mother's condition had suddenly worsened, and she was in critical condition. When my family rushed to the hospital, my mother was barely breathing. Mom? Grandma? No. Ashley, I always wanted you to be happy. Cherish Julie more than anything. I love you. In the end, those were my mother's last words. My mother, who raised me with all her heart alongside my father, adored Julie from the bottom of her heart. My mother's face in the coffin was peaceful, and all I could do was cry. Julie was by my side, crying with me. A little while after my mother passed away, an envelope arrived at our house. A law firm. Ashley was perplexed as she opened the envelope from an unfamiliar sender. Inside was a document stating, I have been entrusted with your mother's will, which leaves all of her inheritance to you. Ashley and her mother had never discussed the subject of inheritance before, so she was taken aback. However, since the letter had indeed arrived, she decided to visit the law firm on her own. "Hello, I'm the attorney Ed." The man who appeared was the middle-aged gentleman with glasses who had been present when she visited her mother in the hospital. "You were in my mother's hospital room before?" Ashley questioned the man with the familiar face. "Yes, we met in the hospital room. Actually, from that time, I was entrusted by your mother." Hearing his kind voice, Ashley found herself on the verge of tears, and then she was shocked beyond belief. 500 million. Yes, Ashley. When your father passed away, you waived your right to the inheritance so your mother could receive it all. When you add that inheritance to your mother's personal assets, even after deducting taxes, this is the amount your mother has named you as the sole heir. My parents had indeed been wealthy, but I hadn't imagined that they had left such an inheritance. I had never asked my parents for money after getting married and avoided the topic of inheritance as it seemed unlucky. Feeling dizzy, I realized this must be an expression of love from my mother. With that thought, I left the procedures to Ed. Your mother cared about you more than anything. She instructed me to assist you if necessary. Please feel free to discuss anything with me. Thank you. I appreciate your help. Ashley bowed her head several times to Ed and left the room. Time passed, and it was around the time of her mother's 49th day memorial service. Her husband, David, began to frequently ask about her mother's inheritance. When they had married, her father was still running his business, so David was vaguely aware that they were wealthy. Each time she asked him to stop talking about it while she was still mourning, he would fall silent, only to subtly bring up the matter of money after some time. The worst were my in-laws. When they came to my mother's memorial service, my father-in-law said, "Ashley, if you are worried about the inheritance, we can help." Huh? Hey, we've had our fair share of disputes over inheritance. When unmarried siblings died, inheritance can be complicated. If you're troubled, feel free to talk about it. That's right. Rely on us too. Yes. Having never shown any inclination to assist them before, she could only give her in-laws a vague response as they put on a knowing facade. And then, about 3 months after her mother's death, David, who had been quiet recently, finally lost his patience. "Hey, have you received your mother's inheritance yet?" A bad feeling swept over her quickly. Ashley lied. The procedures are complicated, so not yet. In reality, she had already completed the procedures and, upon Ed's advice, had deposited the passbook containing the inheritance in a safe deposit box. But it felt right to say that now. Really? But it's been 3 months since your mother passed away, right? Haven't you done the procedures yet? Yeah, so what? Well, never mind. I'm going to bed. For some reason, David headed for the bedroom in high spirits. With the nagging unease in her chest, Ashley prepared for work the next day and then headed for bed. The next day, as Ashley and Julie were cleaning up after dinner, the doorbell rang. Julie hurried to the door, and when Ashley poked her head out from the kitchen, she saw her in-laws who had dropped by unexpectedly and David returning from work. "Why are my father-in-law and mother-in-law here?" "It's not a big deal, Julie. Go to your room." Julie glanced anxiously at us and headed to her room. "What's going on?" "Never mind that, Ashley. We have something to celebrate today." Ed, her father-in-law, was in high spirits as he opened their fridge and took out a beer. "Celebration. You inherited more than $300 million, didn't you? We've already started building a duplex house for us to live together. It even comes with a dreamlike modern kitchen." The one who spoke in the dreamy tone was her mother-in-law. "What? What are you talking about, Ashley?" "Be happy. We've decided to build a duplex house. We used half of our savings and the money that Mom and Dad have put aside for the down payment. The loan is under my name, but you can pay it all at once with your inheritance, right? Give back to the two of them. I quit my job. I decided to start a business using that inheritance you received. David, her husband, looked somehow satisfied as he said these words. Wait a minute. What are you talking about? I told you I haven't received the inheritance yet, didn't I? And what does quitting your job and a duplex house mean? Don't lie, it's clear you've inherited. How about we go on a trip before the house is built? How about Hawaii? Amidst the escalating chaos, David and her mother-in-law were getting excited, agreeing with what Ed said. Then David said, laughing scornfully, "You're stingy, Ashley. We've looked into it because you kept saying you hadn't received the inheritance. You can't renounce an inheritance if you don't process it within 3 months. Whether you lied or told the truth about not processing, you still have inherited, right? That is, considering the scale of my father-in-law's company, there must be more than 300 million. We'll be able to live comfortably thanks to them. Thank you, mother-in-law. Be sure to prepare the money for the duplex house as soon as possible, and my capital too." Seeing David speak like that made her dizzy. But what on earth are these people who want to use my precious inheritance that I received from my mother as they please and indulge in luxury? Although filled with intense anger and about to yell, she couldn't say a word, worried about Julie, who was in the other room. "I'm going outside for a bit." She called out to the 3 of them, but they didn't hear her, happily discussing how they would use the inheritance. She went out without even taking her wallet. The night wind was cool, and it was then that the tears came. She went to the hilltop park where she used to come with her mother and cried, holding back her voice. Her anger didn't subside. Feeling frustrated and worn out, her heart was exploited. Her emotions were a mess, but she couldn't just say she wanted a divorce. They still had their child, Julie. Her mother's words, "Take care of Julie above all else," came back to her, and tears spilled again. Suddenly, someone spoke to her. Surprised, she opened her eyes, and the person began to speak softly. 3 days later, she called her husband and in-laws to a restaurant with private rooms. "So you finally came back home after that day. Did you withdraw the money, Ashley? You shouldn't leave home without telling your husband." "Exactly." Ignoring the words of the 3 people, she took out a document. It was a divorce notice already filled out. "David, I want a divorce." "What? What are you saying?" Her husband looked panicked, and her in-laws looked at each other. "I can't go on with you anymore." "What are you saying?" David's face was turning red as he lashed out at her. "You're leaving us after receiving the inheritance. You changed because you got the money, you miser." "That's my words, Ashley. Snap back. Ever since I inherited my mother's estate, you've been out of control. Quitting jobs to start a business, deciding to live with in-laws without even asking, taking out my savings to build a 2-family home, and then planning a trip to Hawaii. Who is the one who changed when the money came in? I can't possibly stay with such people." "Wait, you can't just divorce me like that." "That's right. Our savings after marriage are shared property. Half of the inheritance belongs to David, no matter what." "That's correct. If it comes to that, we will take 300 million with us." David and my in-laws were foaming at the mouth as they approached me. Just as I was about to respond, the door to the private room slid open. Dad, Grandpa, and Grandma should know better. The inheritance Mom received doesn't become shared property, right, Mr. Ed? There stood my daughter Julie and Attorney Ed. "Julie, and who are you?" "I'm Attorney Ed. Ashley's mother had entrusted me with this matter, and I've been advising Ashley." As Ed bowed, Dave seemed flustered. "That's all well and good, but wait. The inheritance doesn't become shared property?" "That's correct. Inherited property from a deceased parent has not become shared property, nor is it subject to the division of property." "What? You've got to be kidding me. Is this a mistake? That can't be." In front of the flustered 3, I was taken aback. It seems that they really thought that the inheritance I received would become their property. In that case, it's even more reason not to divorce. "I'll cling to you no matter what." My husband with bloodshot eyes shouted out without any regard. "Stop it already?" That was Julie. She continued her calm words. "Since Mom suggested divorce, no. Since Mom inherited the estate, Has Dad ever thought about Mom once? Grandpa and Grandma only ever talk about money. They never once mentioned me. I can't consider such people as family. David and my in-laws were taken aback. The day I was crying about my inheritance, Julie was the one who spoke up. Julie came running after me, and she told me, Dad, Grandpa, and Grandma are too much, trying to take Grandma's legacy for themselves. Mom, I'm on your side. Let's fight this together. With those words, I made up my mind, contacted Ed, and arranged this meeting. Julie, it's not like that. Dad wants you to be happy. That's right, Julie dear. You'd be happier living with us, wouldn't you? That's right. A child shouldn't interfere. My desperate husband and still assertive in-laws. Julie, with an exasperated look on her face, said, I'm going with Mom. I can't bear to be with you anymore. Julie said this and looked away. Anyway, we've made up our minds. Julie and I will be leaving. As I said this calmly, David got angry. Hey, I've never cheated, and you can't force a divorce. I'll hire a lawyer. We'll get that money one way or another. If that's the case, I will take care of it from here. Ed spoke quietly. The issue here is whether there are grave reasons for not continuing the marriage, quitting his job, using the household savings without permission, deciding to live together, and Julie is saying she can't bear it. There are various points we can argue. Moreover, your daughter recorded the sound of all of you begging for Ashley's inheritance. That should also serve as evidence. Damn it. David slumped, and my in-laws turned pale. After seeing that, Julie and I left the restaurant. A year later, thanks to Ed's efforts, my divorce with David was finalized. Julie and I moved into the house my mother had lived in, but there were several times when we received letters saying, I love you, come back, and David was seen loitering near Julie's school. So we asked Abe to apply for a restraining order. After that, it was quiet. According to the rumors, they actually did build a two-family home. My already retired in-laws had to work in a factory, and although David looked for work, he couldn't find any and is now doing manual labor. I heard from the neighbors that there were constant arguments in the new two-family house because of their troublesome fights. They became disliked by everyone in the neighborhood. Julie and I are still living peacefully, helping each other. A while ago, Julie said, I want to study abroad in the country where Grandma grew up, so it cut ties completely with my ex-husband. We made up our minds to move overseas. We used a bit of my mother's inheritance, but I'm sure she would be pleased. Now, Julie seems to be enjoying school every day, and I've started working as a teacher there. I hope these peaceful days continue. Everyone aspires to be the best at something, but when this confidence transforms into taking others for granted, the universe might deliver a lesson. Understanding that there's always someone better out there is the key to humility, which is what truly defines the strongest individuals. My name is Mina, and I've been married to my husband Thomas for 2 years. When we decided to tie the knot, Thomas warned me about his troublesome sister, suggesting she might become a burden. As an only child, the prospect of having a sister excited me. But Thomas's words also sparked anxiety and curiosity about the kind of trouble she could bring. Now, 2 years into our marriage, I fully comprehend and have experienced what Thomas meant. I was born into a relatively wealthy family where my father runs a mid-sized trading company. He is well-informed and progressive in his thinking. My parents always respected my decisions, creating an environment where I could freely explore my interests. The 2008 Lehman Brothers collapse, when I was just an 11-year-old elementary school student, intrigued me. Witnessing the significant impact it had on the world and Japan, I became fascinated by how a disruption in the flow of funds could cause a global panic. This sparked my interest in researching financial circulation. Naturally curious and apparently quite intelligent, my parents had me take an IQ test, and the results exceeded the normal range. As I delved into this newfound interest, many aspects became clear, but my curiosity never waned throughout middle and high school. Continuing my exploration of this topic, I pursued a major in college that allowed me to deepen my understanding. As I delved further, my eagerness to apply my knowledge led me to venture into day trading, encouraged by my professor, who highlighted day trading as an excellent way to experience capital flow firsthand. I embraced the challenge, aware of the need for careful management to avoid debt. My research efforts were extensive as I identified statistically favorable stocks for day trading. Armed with a modest sum from all the allowances I had saved up, I engaged in buying and selling the same stock within the same day, with the goal of capitalizing on quick results. My predictions proved accurate, and though the initial increase was modest, I steadily grew my funds by repeating this process and gradually increasing my investment. In a year, I managed to amplify the initial amount by more than 50 times. While the sum may not have been significant on a larger scale, my primary concern wasn't about the magnitude of the achievement. What mattered most to me was whether the answers I had derived from my research were correct. During my university seminar, I encountered a student named Thomas, known for his analytical skills. Our shared perspectives on various topics drew us close, and after graduation, despite my initial plan to join my father's company, Thomas proposed an alternative path. He identified a job at a foreign investment firm, a proposition he presented on the day of our graduation ceremony. Following a celebration, Thomas confessed his feelings, and without hesitation, I said yes. His intelligence had always been a source of comfort, and his understanding nature made me feel at ease. As we both embarked on new journeys, gaining experience, our relationship continued to strengthen. Inspired by the concept of trade at my father's company, I dedicated myself to researching foreign companies to gain an advantage in negotiations and established a robust foundation for our deals. Thomas, with his inherent analytical skills, excelled in identifying profitable investment opportunities, earning high praise within his company. Despite our busy schedules, we maintained our connection through dates that provided refreshing breaks before diving back into our respective work. Over the 5 years of our relationship, we became indispensable to each other, evolving into a reliable support system. Deeply immersed in our exciting careers, we decided it was the right time to take the next step. Thomas proposed, expressing his desire to spend the rest of his life with me. Without hesitation, I accepted his proposal, eager to begin our life together. However, when it was time for a family meeting, Thomas disclosed something important about his sister, Alice. According to Thomas, Alice, his sister 2 years younger, was known for being challenging. He cautioned that she might cause some discomfort or inconvenience. Alice, exceptionally bright from a young age, developed a competitive spirit, looking down on others, including Thomas, whom she considered inferior. Even though Thomas was regarded as a prodigy, Alice claimed superiority, joining a rival investment and consulting firm to compete with him in her career. Thomas was worried that his engagement might affect Alice's pride, as she always sought to prove herself superior. Having no close friends and seemingly without a significant other, Alice appeared to harbor insecurities, masked by a brave face. Thomas was concerned about how she might react, fearing that she would intensify her efforts to demonstrate her strength in the face of our engagement. Attempting to reassure Thomas with a light-hearted "it's okay" proved ineffective as his worry seemed unending. This only heightened my curiosity about his intense sister, Alice. Finally meeting her at a family gathering, her sharp, intelligent beauty was unmistakable, though a certain coldness lingered. Whether that was intrinsic to her nature or a result of my preconceived notions, I couldn't discern. Thomas's parents, in contrast, were kind and humorous, putting me at ease about getting along with them. However, beyond the initial greeting, Alice remained silent, merely eating her meal while scrutinizing me as if assessing my worth. After the meeting, as everyone was leaving, Alice pulled me aside. Curious about the person I would be, she expressed disappointment, dismissing me as just a girl who secured a job at her parents' company and likely slacking off. She asserted her financial prowess, claiming to move large amounts of money and make significant profits, placing herself on a level far superior to mine. According to Alice, Thomas settling for someone like me was disappointing, and she concluded by stating that today's gain was realizing how much I fell short of her standards. Stunned and unsure how to respond, Alice left the room, leaving me there. Thomas returned, noticing I hadn't left with Alice. Concerned, he asked if something had happened. In response to Alice's jab, I laughed it off, assuring Thomas that it was just a minor comment. Thomas apologized for his sister's rudeness, but I reassured him that I wasn't bothered. It didn't hurt, but I couldn't help but wonder what would happen the next time we met, particularly at the wedding. Strangely, I found myself looking forward to it, anticipating the interesting dynamics that might unfold. Surprised by my response, Thomas and I went on to have a grand wedding attended by family, friends, and colleagues from both sides. We pledged our eternal love and reveled in the joyous occasion, but Alice appeared grumpy and irritated right from the start. Thomas had mentioned that Alice had neither friends nor a romantic partner, so I could somewhat understand her feelings, finding it slightly amusing. During a break for a wardrobe change, as I waited for the staff to assist me, Alice entered seemingly without reason. She remarked that my happiness was only for the day and predicted that, as a plain woman, I wouldn't get the spotlight after the wedding, insinuating that I would just leech off Thomas' earnings. Unfazed, I couldn't comprehend how anyone could be satisfied with that. She declared her intentions to climb even higher on her own and find someone better than Thomas for an even grander wedding. With that rapid-fire monologue, a self-satisfied Alice left without giving me a chance to respond. As the staff walked in just after Alice's departure, I burst into laughter at the timing. Apologizing to the puzzled staff, I started changing, realizing that Alice knew how to keep things interesting. Since the wedding, I had no contact with her. I anticipated seeing her again, perhaps at Christmas when visiting my in-laws, but an unexpected connection with Alice arose sooner than expected. My father decided to seek external consulting for asset preservation and expansion at his company. Although I offered to handle it, he insisted on bringing in outside expertise, choosing a specific firm. Upon hearing the familiar name of the consulting firm during negotiations at my father's company, a sense of recognition washed over me, but I couldn't immediately place it. To my surprise, Alice was among the representatives of the firm, and the realization dawned that it was her company. We exchanged surprised glances, but silently agreed to act as if we were meeting for the first time, keeping our sister-in-law relationship a secret from the other team members. When I discussed the situation with Thomas at home, he already knew about it, expressing frustration. He suggested I step away from the project, but I found the situation amusing and laughed it off. Despite my amusement, I had to maintain professionalism during the negotiations. I pointed out flaws and inadequacies in their proposals, supported by logical reasoning that unsettled them. Alice tried to counter with past examples and mathematical evidence, but my responses exposed their weak points, leaving them silent. The meeting ended in my favor, with the other team agreeing to come up with a second proposal for the next meeting. As I relaxed with coffee after they left, I received a phone call meant for me. Answering the phone, it was Alice. She acknowledged my success, but declared that someone as excellent as her couldn't be bested by me. With a parting shot about not needing guidance from someone like me, she hung up. Bursting into laughter, I held the phone, drawing curious glances from nearby colleagues. From that point on, I took full control of the meetings, with their team often scrambling to respond to my points. Alice attempted comebacks but consistently fell short, her frustration visible. When I shared this with Thomas, he revealed that Alice had never been outdone by anyone before. Additionally, he mentioned that Alice had recently faced rejection from a guy she liked, compounding her irritation. I couldn't help but let out a surprised "huh" and stifle my laughter as the consulting project finally concluded successfully. The opposing team leader thanked us, expressing that they had learned a lot. And as everyone dispersed, Alice and I found ourselves alone. Alice, however, was not satisfied with the outcome. "I'm not satisfied with how things went. I'll make sure to get the better of you next time. Just so you know, I am more excellent. I even bought a tower mansion at my age. Only someone as outstanding as me could afford a brand new tower mansion, Alice declared, emphasizing her success as an investor. With that statement, Alice left, and Thomas later confirmed that what she said was true. Alice had indeed found success as an investor and recently bought a tower mansion to live on her own. While acknowledging her undeniable talent and the achievement within her reach, I genuinely wanted to congratulate her. A few days later, on the weekend, I had some business at a tower mansion. As I stopped at a certain mid-level floor, a door opened, and a resident stepped out. The resident and I locked eyes and both exclaimed in surprise. It was Alice. "Why are you here? If you're not invited to the party, did you come to clean?" I questioned. It seemed that today was the day of Alice's celebrity home party, as she had mentioned. "Not at all. I'm here to deliver something to an acquaintance on this floor." "You have an acquaintance here, and you came down from where?" Alice replied. "Well, my home is on the top floor of this mansion. Naturally, I had to come down." I countered, reminding her that she and Thomas lived in a single-story house because Thomas couldn't handle heights. Alice revealed that the tower mansion was her office and workshop. As we argued loudly in the hallway, a voice behind us asked, "Alice, what's going on?" Alice turned and said, "Sorry, Senior." The woman who had spoken and 3 other women looked at us with concern. "I apologize for not greeting you downstairs. I was just dealing with—" Alice seemed at a loss for words. The woman Alice called Senior looked at me, searching her memory, and exclaimed in surprise, "Aren't you Maya?" Alice was visibly confused. The senior explained, "Don't you know? This is Mrs. Mia, our new external board director starting this month. She's also known as the investment goddess whom Alice admires." Alice was speechless at this unexpected revelation, and the senior continued, "Also, she owns a significant share of your company, which made her a board director." Alice was overwhelmed by this unexpected turn of events. The senior added, "Alice, while extremely talented, has a poor reputation regarding teamwork and attitude towards colleagues. If she can't improve, she can't continue working in her current role." Alice was already knocked out by the harsh reality, kneeling and collapsed on the floor. Later, Thomas told me that Alice, once a fierce wolf, had become a small dog. It seemed she finally understood that there's always someone above her. Reflecting on my previous attitude, I felt a bit guilty for finding it all so amusing. Alice has become a lesson for me to never underestimate anyone and to treat others with respect. Thomas apologized for not being more involved in these events, but it's not his responsibility at all. His concern showed his good nature, and I love him all the more for it. My current hope is to start a family with Thomas soon. I can't wait to enjoy life as a family of 3. If Alice changes her mindset and broadens her perspective, she'll surely find friends and a partner soon. One night, I had a dream of a family of 3, and by the end of next year, we'll be a family of 5, triplets from the Cabbage Patch. I woke up sweating but couldn't help laughing at the prospect. Thrown at me instead of a warm greeting during a family gathering just before my son's wedding was a remark that hit hard. In front of me, a baguette from an upscale French restaurant rested on a glass plate, a symbol of unexpected humiliation served by my son's fiancée. I had raised my son, Christopher, on my own, and never did I imagine such a moment of degradation. As a 55-year-old housewife named So, widowed early in life, I had dedicated myself to nurturing Christopher. This year, he turned 25, graduated from college, and secured a job, becoming the pride of my life. Despite his success, he chose to continue living with me in the house left by his late father. I cherished the idea of spending more time with him. However, my world took an unexpected turn when Christopher revealed he had a girlfriend and intended to marry her. Initially shocked, I soon embraced the news with genuine joy, expressing my happiness at his growth. Christopher, still living with me, promised to bring her home soon, but the opportunity didn't materialize. Curiosity and anticipation built up in me. And when I finally asked about her, Christopher shared some details. Her name was Roy, 4 years older than him, and she worked as a tutor from a family of teachers. The revelation surprised me, and I wondered about their relationship, but I patiently waited to meet her. Time passed, and 2 months went by without a meeting. The absence of Roy started feeling intentional. Fate intervened when, by chance, I overheard a conversation during lunch. Seated back to back with a woman, she complained loudly about her upcoming family meeting before the wedding. Intrigued, I listened as she expressed a deliberate intention to delay meeting the family, wanting to test Christopher's commitment to their relationship and prove he was not a mama's boy. The unexpected encounter left me contemplating the dynamics at play, realizing that fate could be both intriguing and frightening. She said it, and I nearly turned around. Christopher's name echoed in the air, causing a slight dizziness. Her friend's advice to Roy, "You need to be more humble," confirmed the woman loudly discussing her future mother-in-law was none other than Christopher's fiancée. Holding my coffee cup, my hand trembled, and my friend, sensing my distress, asked if I was okay. I mechanically ate the recommended dessert, my mind fixated on escaping that place as quickly as possible. Unaware of my presence, Roy continued her complaints about her fiance's family. She belittled the concept of a single mother family, comparing it to her supposedly superior educational background. Roy labeled me a clinging mother and spoke about making Christopher abandon me after the wedding. Fear overwhelmed any anger I felt. The conflict between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law had begun prematurely. Even before the family meeting before the wedding, Roy showcased her disdain. Yet, she was the woman Christopher chose. I tried to reassure myself that there must be something wonderful about her. Back home, I attempted to calm my nerves, resolving not to tell Christopher about this incident. Alone, I stopped pushing him about the family meeting. I knew she had no intention of attending, and I refused to continuously be looked down upon by being too accommodating. Christopher sensed my change of heart, but didn't press further. "It's okay if you're busy, whenever it's convenient for you," I told him, trying to ease his burden. The wedding plans between Christopher and Roy seemed to progress faster than the family meeting. Spotting a wedding venue brochure on the living room table, I realized the countdown had begun. I contemplated speaking up about the wrong order of things, but refrained for my son's sake. Making a fuss would lead to accusations of being unable to let go or being a mama's boy. Faceless accusations that would upset me. Christopher was crucial to me, but he was an independent adult. I had refrained from interfering more than necessary, demonstrating my tolerance. One morning, Christopher abruptly announced a family meeting with the parents-in-law. They had reserved a fancy French restaurant, and he wanted me to come. The meeting was scheduled in 2 days, a sudden announcement that left me a bit irritated. Shouldn't such things be planned after matching everyone's schedules? I held back my frustration, saying, "All right, I haven't formally met Roy yet, so it's good to meet her sooner." Christopher apologized for the sudden plan, but in my mind, it was Roy and her family who should be apologizing, not him. I reassured him that it's fine. On the day of the family meeting, Christopher and I arrived at the designated upscale French restaurant. I felt a bit nervous, it being my first time at such a fancy place. Christopher chuckled, acknowledging the nerve-wracking atmosphere. As we gave our name to the staff, we were guided to a private room where Roy's family had already gathered. Roy and her mother, Mara, were present. Excusing ourselves, I'd opened the door to the private room. Seated there were Mara, exuding a definite teacher vibe, and Roy, sporting slightly flashy makeup. Her dress seemed mismatched, likely chosen by Mara for the occasion. Roy and Mara remained silent until I finished my greetings, their scrutiny palpable as if evaluating me as a lesser presence. Christopher, familiar with Mara, greeted her with "long time no see." Mara chuckled, mentioning she had been looking forward to meeting the famous mother, a slight sting in her mention of single mother. Suppressing any reaction, I played it down. emphasizing Christopher's inexperience and suggesting they take care of him. Mara, contentedly nodding, maintained an air of superiority. Her demeanor hinted at how she might treat her students and their parents, an attitude I wouldn't desire for my child. She invited me to sit, yet Roy hadn't greeted me. With reluctance, I initiated conversation, prompting Roy to respond with a mocking snort, deeming repetition inefficient. Her arrogant remark stirred anger within me, but I restrained my temper. She was the woman Christopher had chosen. I feigned calmness, acknowledging her comment with forced civility, though I felt close to my limit. Mara informed us that Roy's father would be late due to work, suggesting we proceed without him. Roy then made a seemingly innocent comment to Christopher, insinuating his lack of exposure to such lavish food due to his past poverty. Christopher, unfazed, went along with her comment. I always knew Christopher to be kind and patient, but this situation seemed beyond that. Concerns about how he navigated society started to creep in. Was he possibly being taken advantage of? A parental worry nagged at me. Ignoring the odd expressions from Roy and Mara, I suggested we enjoy the feast. However, their unpleasant smiles intensified, and the reason behind their mockery soon became apparent. As the first dish arrived on a beautifully decorated plate, I couldn't help but exclaim at the sight of a simple baguette on a glass plate. Roy and Mara seemed to find this hilariously amusing, laughing heartily at my shocked expression. It turned out that the owner of the upscale French restaurant was Mara's brother, and they had collaborated to ridicule me. "The poor that suits you best," Roy said, openly mocking me. Christopher, seemingly pale, and I were left in disbelief. Trying to contain my anger, I muttered about how this supposedly suited a poor person like me. Roy misinterpreted my reaction, thinking I was crying. Dismissing it, she laughed even harder. Surprisingly, Mara, who might be expected to scold Roy, only said, "Oh dear, Roy," without any intention of reprimanding her. I couldn't bear the idea of such individuals becoming part of my family. Just as I raised my bowed head, Roy's father entered, apologizing for being late. Witnessing the baguette situation, he seemed taken aback. Roy proudly explained that she had the baguette prepared, thinking I, raised in poverty, hadn't experienced such cuisine. Her father scolded her for taking the joke too far, but couldn't hide his amusement. The thought of them becoming my family was unbearable. As the father turned pale, I looked up and recognized him. Cedric, the principal of a private high school where I had been facing difficulties. I expressed my surprise, and he exclaimed in shock, revealing that he had become the principal 3 years ago. Instead of dwelling on educational policies, I couldn't resist suggesting he pay more attention to education at home, especially considering the insult from his daughter, something I vowed never to forget. I said, staring down at him. He had always berated me, claiming that a single mother couldn't be a principal. He had spread rumors that I couldn't properly educate my own child. Roy, realizing the impact of her actions, seemed taken aback. Marcia trembled, lost for words. I looked at each member of Roy's family and slowly bit into the baguette. The sound of me crunching echoed in the room. Delicious, as expected of a high-end French restaurant's baguette. "How about it, Cedric?" I'd offered, smiling as I held out the glass plate with the baguette. His hand trembled amusingly as he took it. Don't get the wrong idea. I'd always separate work and personal life. Your dismissal has always been a topic at the board meetings. I was the one opposing it. Without rivalry, there's no momentum for reform. But your role ends here, I declared, giving him a final warning. In fact, I had evidence of him accepting bribes during admissions, manipulating interviews, and enjoying a luxurious life with that money. I was still deciding whether to pursue criminal charges, but if he left the school quietly, I was willing to let it go. "Christopher, let's go home. She may be this kind of lady, but can you still see her as a marriage partner? I won't stop you if you choose her," I said to Christopher, whose gaze was fixed on the baguette Cedric held out to him. Roy, with a strange smile, whispered, "You'll marry me, right?" thinking that marrying him was her only way to save Cedric's position. Her pleading eyes turned to him. He looked down, gripping his hands on his knees. The engagement is off. This marriage is as if it never happened, he declared. It's just a joke. I didn't mean to mock you. It's a joke, Christopher. You're so stiff. Roy desperately tried to cover up. If that wasn't mockery, then what was it? I was amazed that she couldn't come up with a better excuse. He looked at Roy with an unexpectedly cold gaze. Roy, you've been given a lot by your parents, education, and love. But I believe I received even more from my mom. Seeing her work was cool. She's still cool, he declared. He could never forgive her for mocking me and expressed pity for the students she was teaching. I wouldn't want to be taught by someone like her. I heard bad rumors about you but chose to believe otherwise. You betrayed that trust, he said, causing tears to stream down Roy's face. She seemed to finally understand the irreversible damage done. Wait. You're joking about the breakup, right? I bragged about getting married to my friends. I can't break it off. It's embarrassing, she pleaded tearfully. What's most necessary for you now is to reflect on how things came to this. We probably won't see each other again, but I hope you grow, I said. As Christopher and I were about to leave the private room, Cedric grabbed his shoulder to stop him. Christopher shook off his hand as if it were something filthy. I've been patient, but let me say this clearly. What's wrong with being raised by a single mother? Did you see Roy's vulgar behavior? Raised by respectable parents. You should be more ashamed, he said firmly. Cedric had no response and looked down in shame. Roy's cries echoed in the private room as we left the restaurant. The moment we stepped outside, we heard Cedric's angry voice, probably yelling at Roy. Christopher, you need to be more discerning in choosing women. When I said that, he scratched his head and mumbled, It's embarrassing. Apparently, Roy had aggressively pursued him, and Christopher, who tends to be easily swayed, fell into that situation. It was clear that Roy saw an opportunity in him. Regardless, I expressed relief that everything came to light before the marriage as we headed home. The engagement ended amicably. Roy initially demanded compensation, but Christopher dismissed it logically, explaining to his lawyer that Roy was entirely to blame for the broken engagement. The compensation demand was dropped, and when threatened with a lawsuit, Roy quickly backed down. Perhaps her parents advised her not to escalate the situation further. Though I usually keep work and personal life separate, Cedric had to leave the school due to the bribery issue during admissions becoming public. Faced with the choice of leaving quietly or going to court, he opted for the former. Unemployed and desperately seeking a new job, he faced the challenge of overcoming the bad rumors that spread fast in the industry. Roy, having resigned from her tutoring job, was reportedly confined to a room in her parents' house, too embarrassed to even seek new employment. Marcia, burdened with 2 unemployed adults, was allegedly preparing for divorce, yet she couldn't maintain her previous luxurious lifestyle. She wanted to use her earnings solely for herself, citing that as her reason for divorce. A logical decision, perhaps, but one that led to the family's downfall. While I feel a bit sorry for her, I believe it's her responsibility. Sometimes after the incident, I felt genuinely happy for the first time in a while. Christopher introduced me to a wonderful woman, a single mother working at the same place as him. She has a daughter about to turn 3, and it seems she was the one who lifted Christopher's spirits after the broken engagement with Roy. She is bright and sunny, and her daughter is fond of Christopher. Despite the roundabout journey, I am slightly relieved that Christopher seems to be on his way to building a happy family. Maybe, despite the challenges, I'll even become a grandmother. And then, Bob dropped the bombshell. Clear out your room next month. When my mother gets discharged from the hospital, I'm bringing her straight to this house. Living together might make household chores easier, but I'll have to face my mother-in-law and endure her snide comments every single day. I was utterly devastated. Understanding that he seemed determined to make this happen with his mother, rather than argue with him, I knew it was better to discreetly take measures. Years of experience had taught me that. Bob left, not suspecting a thing, and seemed quite pleased. Everything's going according to my plan, I thought. It was so simple, it was laughable. A few hours later, after tidying up and taking a break, my phone rang loudly. It was a frantic call from Bob. "Hey, what the heck? The house is empty. I am Catherine Rose, a 45-year-old working mother holding a managerial position at a publishing company. I have a husband and 2 kids, a typical American family. When I got married, the idea of balancing work and family was just beginning to gain traction. It was an era when it was common for women to marry and become homemakers. Bob had allowed me to work, and in return, I've given my all to both my job and household chores. After having kids, I've been fully committed to raising them as well. But lately, I've been feeling overwhelmed. My mother-in-law, Mary, who was initially against me working, has started to complain. When are you going to stop this job nonsense? You're such a terrible wife. Back in our day, the job came second. Our main duty was to dedicate ourselves to our homes. I've been working hard in both my career and home, raising the kids and managing household chores. I'd always thought of it as repaying the kindness Bob showed by supporting my career. Perhaps seeing my dedication, both my daughter and son help around the house. My daughter does the laundry and ironing, while my son takes care of the bath and fills the tub every day. When I come home, I just have to prepare the meal and clean up. I'm so grateful to my kids. But even though we're both working, Bob doesn't lift a finger. I've asked him to help out several times, but Bob's answer is always the same. "Catherine, I let you keep working, didn't I? You're trying to skip out on your wife duties and make me do the chores because you want to have an easy life. Quit playing the victim." And every time my mother-in-law would tattle on me, and I'd get an earful from her. "Bob's the breadwinner of the family, you know, and you're trying to make him do house chores. What are you thinking, Mary? This is why it's never good for a woman to work. Be grateful I even let you work. Understand your place." Lately, perhaps she's bored, but almost every night she calls with these snide remarks. It's become so frequent and unbearable that both my kids and I are fed up. My kids have even started pretending they are needed somewhere else to hang up the phone. Sure, I'd appreciate the opportunity to keep working, but why the constant hostility? I've been the one handling both the household chores and raising the kids. She should understand how challenging it is to juggle both roles. What more does she want from me? Right now, I'm under so much stress, and the only saving grace is that my kids are on my side. The root cause of this situation lies in Bob's salary. Truth be told, Bob's pay isn't that great. It would be considered on the lower end. He had a tough time finding a job and eventually landed one at a small company thanks to a family connection. If he had shown some initiative, I wouldn't have cared about the low salary and would have supported him wholeheartedly. However, Bob got down on himself because of the way he got the job. In the beginning, he used to mutter things about how he should have been working at a bigger, more renowned company. He only ever did the work given to him, never striving for promotions or looking for new job opportunities. Someone truly capable would have studied on the side or honed their skills to find better job opportunities, but Bob didn't. So he only ever got raises based on seniority, and his performance-based bonuses were always the bare minimum. On the other hand, the company I work for is a nationwide corporation with parental leave policies in place early on. While it felt the effects of the economic bubble, it's a reputable company that has managed to avoid major salary cuts. Moreover, I've climbed up to the position of manager, successfully handling a significant number of contracts and projects. Naturally, I earn considerably more than Bob. I'm even covering our kids' expenses, using my paycheck to set aside money for their college funds. I've taken full advantage of the benefits of working for a large corporation. Looking back, it feels like I was living off my savings when I took parental leave for my 2 children and had no salary. With Bob's salary, there's no way he could cover all the living expenses with 2 kids. I don't recall ever receiving living expenses from Bob, and there's no record of any transfers. Perhaps Bob let me continue working because he thought he could rely on my earnings. Lately, I've been thinking about this a lot, wondering if we've mostly been living on my salary. To confirm this suspicion, I looked at my bank book, and it became evident. The rent, utilities, groceries, and the kids' school fees. I've been paying for all of it. There's not a single penny coming in from Bob's account. I chuckled, feeling utterly drained. Bob's salary is completely spent on his hobbies and providing pocket money to my mother-in-law. I've always believed I owed Bob for allowing me to continue working, which is why I've been putting in so much effort with household chores and childcare. However, the current situation is quite different. I'm covering all the living expenses while Bob freely spends his salary without saving a dime. In terms of supporting our lives, it seems I've become the main breadwinner, while Bob does as he pleases. If I were to leave with the kids, what would happen? Or if I handed him this bank book and told him to leave, would Bob quietly go along with his claim of being the main breadwinner? It's a perplexing situation, and I can't comprehend his perspective. His catchphrase is, "I'm the one supporting y'all. If you've got a problem, just leave." Is he under the impression that he covers the living expenses while spending his salary freely? It's a total mystery. If I, the one paying for everything, were to leave with the kids, what would transpire? Would Bob just quietly go along, sticking to his claim of being the main breadwinner? He'd probably tattle to my mother-in-law. I wonder if she knows about the difference in our salaries. If she did, she likely wouldn't make those snide remarks. Perhaps she thinks Bob is a wonderful son, supporting his family and even allowing his wife to work. If she knew about the salary difference, what would she think? Would she ditch Bob and cozy up to me? No, that's the last thing I'd want. As I contemplate these thoughts, my mother-in-law has an accident at her home and hurts her foot. It appears she'll need hospitalization and physical therapy for a while. With my father-in-law having passed away before Bob and I got married, my mother-in-law has been living alone. Either Bob or I have to take care of her. In a call from the hospitalized mother-in-law, she starts with her demands and continues despite my attempt to explain my work situation. I decide to let Bob handle her, given the stress of being criticized by her for working. When I ask Bob to care for my mother-in-law, he complains immediately. "Hey, Catherine, why aren't you looking after Mom? I'm working too, you know." Despite being his mother, he shifts all caregiving responsibilities to his wife. Holding back my frustration, I reply, "I have work too, Bob, plus all the chores at home. If you'd help around the house, maybe I could visit her more. More importantly, I think your mom would be happier if it was you who came to care for her." While venting stress on a daughter-in-law is common, it's better to approach such situations with positivity. So I keep finding reasons to avoid caring for my mother-in-law. I diligently washed and folded my mother-in-law's laundry, carefully packing it into a bag. If she asked for specific items, I made sure to buy them, even checking the names of the products she requested. Even if Bob took credit for these things and I ended up shouldering the blame, I didn't mind. I just wanted to avoid hearing my mother-in-law's snide remarks. Thankfully, my judgment seemed right. My mother-in-law greeted Bob with a big smile every day. Apparently, for a mother like mine, nothing beats the joy of being cherished by her son. Having her beloved son around must feel much better than dealing with a daughter-in-law she'd want to make sarcastic comments about every day. It seemed like she eagerly awaited Bob's return from work, focusing on chatting with him. She handed Bob a shopping list note, and since the first time she was admitted to the hospital, she hadn't called me. Observing my mother-in-law's smiling interactions with Bob, it seemed he felt like he was being a good son. Even when he returned home at night, he handed me the laundry and shopping notes without any complaints. Although Bob would throw in some sarcastic remarks at me while handing over my mother-in-law's things, I was able to live peacefully. In the middle of the night, I muttered to myself that I just didn't want to hear any of my mother-in-law's complaints right now. I hoped for things to stay peaceful for a while. However, injuries took a toll on my mother-in-law's age, and despite my efforts through Bob for her rehab, she tended to skip it. Delighted with her son's visits, she would wait in her room for Bob's arrival, making various requests. While my mother-in-law rarely called on me directly, I was the one who actually fulfilled her requests, running errands, doing laundry, and even bringing her snacks. All she did was sit in her hospital room, chatting cheerfully with her son, while I handled the housework. It was a relief not to see my mother-in-law, but I was worn out from her numerous requests, and shopping alone became a significant chore. Understanding that living alone was inconvenient with her weakened legs, my mother-in-law made a shocking request to Bob. She expressed difficulty in shopping and preparing meals, asking him not to leave her alone. Of course, Bob sided with her, suggesting they live together. It seemed they were moving in that direction without consulting me. Finally, Bob dropped the bombshell. He would be living with his mother starting next month, instructing me to clear out my room. From the perspective of efficiency in household chores, it made sense for my mother-in-law to live with us. However, I was now faced with the prospect of seeing my mother-in-law every day and enduring her nagging. Despite my downcast feelings, Bob acted as if it was already decided that we would all live together. "I understand," I replied with little energy. Bob seemed determined to force this co-living situation, regardless of the despair I felt. It might be better to secretly make plans rather than argue about it. I knew this from years of experience. While Bob and my mother-in-law happily planned for the move, I constantly thought about how I could escape. I have my own room where I gather and review work materials. It's like a study or an office, essential for me. Bob wants me to give it up. Without this room, my work would be impacted, and I might have to come home even later than I do now. I muttered to myself while staring at the bookshelf, wondering where to move all these books and documents. I can't leave them at home if we live with my mother-in-law. They're too important to risk getting thrown away or damaged. It may sound like something out of a TV drama, but I really fear she might throw them out, especially since she'll probably target what she knows is important to me. And if I dare complain, she'll feign ignorance and run to Bob for support. There will be no peace for me in this house once we start living together. I can see her bossing me around and making snide remarks about my work, wearing me out. What should I do? If my mother-in-law is coming to this house, I had a sudden realization. Why hadn't I thought of this simple solution before? It seems living with my mother-in-law and all her nagging wore me down more than I realized. It felt like the fog before my eyes was gradually clearing up. Well, of course, there's absolutely no need for me to hold back. Why didn't I realize something so simple? I mumbled to myself and immediately began making preparations. As the month changed, the day of my mother-in-law's discharge from the hospital arrived. Bob was all excited, having taken the day off from the start of the morning. "Hey, you better take proper care of my mom from now on. Don't think I'm going to step in like I did when she was in the hospital," he said in a commanding tone. Without responding to Bob's order, I changed the subject. "Oh, speaking of which, your mom's been in the hospital for quite a while, right? Hospital food is bland, and they don't give you much. I bet a gourmet like her wasn't satisfied. I think the discharge process and packing will take up the morning. So why don't you take her out for some good food? You took the day off after all. How about a nice drive, just the two of you? I think she'd really appreciate it." I handed Bob a generous amount of cash. I had set aside some money for living expenses and even Bob's personal spending, but this was more than his monthly allowance. Surprised by the unexpected bonus, Bob's spirits lifted even higher. "Well, aren't you thoughtful? All right, I'll use this money and go for a drive with my mom. I'll give you a call when we decide about dinner. Make sure the house is in tip-top shape for my mom. All right." Without a hint of suspicion, Bob happily left. Everything was going just as I had planned. It was almost too simple. I couldn't help but laugh. This should buy me some time. I eagerly anticipated Bob and my mother-in-law's return as I continued tidying up the house. It was crucial to finish cleaning before they came back. A few hours later, just as I was taking a break after completing my tasks, My cell phone rang loudly. The call came in a flustered tone from Bob. Hey, what's going on? The house is empty. That's right. After Bob went to pick up my mother-in-law, I moved all our stuff to the new house we just rented. Of course, I left some of Bob's personal belongings and a bed for my mother-in-law in the room. Oh, you're back already. You told me to clear out the room, so I emptied both the room and the living room for Mom to feel comfortable. From now on, please enjoy your time with her, I responded nonchalantly, which only infuriated Bob. You've got to be kidding me. The living room and kitchen are totally empty. After all I've done to support this family, how could you? There it was, his go-to line. He seemed to believe that saying this put him in a superior position. How naive. No, Bob. I've been the one supporting the family, including you. Weren't you spending your paycheck on pocket money for your mom and your own hobbies, and yet you demand an allowance from the family budget? How does that make you the breadwinner? Bob seemed surprised by my resistance, but he retorted nonetheless. His argument, however, was nonsensical. Shut it. I'm the man here. I'm the head of this household. You, as my wife, should just do as I say. Now put everything back the way it was. No thanks. I bought all the furniture in the living room and all the kitchenware with my salary. The kids are with me, so don't worry. I also paid for the rent, utilities, and groceries of that house. So, in reality, I'm the breadwinner. Why did you decide to live with your mom without consulting me? I can't live with someone so selfish as you. Wish you can be the provider. Now live your life as you please. It seemed that Bob finally realized my intentions. Hold on. Are you saying the rent for this place I've paid up until the end of this month, but from next month, you'll need to handle it? I've also canceled all the automatic payments for electricity, gas, and the internet. So good luck with that. Bob's words probably tipped off the situation. My mother-in-law also started making a racket in a loud voice. How could you do this, Catherine? Just because you have a job doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. Fine, Bob and I will live here in luxury. Oh, does my mother-in-law not know about Bob's earnings? I hope you can have that luxurious life. That is, if your son can afford it anyway. Goodbye. Wait, Catherine. Where are you right now? I didn't bother listening to the rest of Bob's rant. I hung up and blocked both Bob and my mother-in-law's numbers. The aftermath unfolded as expected. With his meager salary from an uninspiring job at a small company, Bob had little left after paying the rent and utilities for the needlessly spacious apartment that once housed a family of 4. Constant bickering between Bob and my mother-in-law became a regular occurrence. In their new, oversized living space, complaints about meals were met with retorts like, "Can't you provide something better for your mother? And shut up. If you want something else, make it yourself. You're just making excuses, saying walking is too hard after slacking off on your rehab. You don't do anything at home, Mom. You're just wasting time." Neglecting her rehabilitation, my mother-in-law's legs weakened, and she refused to engage in any home workouts. Frustration crept in as her unreasonable demands on Bob increased. There were even concerns about early signs of Alzheimer's. Adding my mother-in-law's pension, their financial situation felt like poverty. Moving to a smaller, more suitable place seemed logical, but it appeared Bob hadn't considered it. Since that incident, I had blocked all communication from both Bob and my mother-in-law. They didn't know our new address, and any attempts to contact me were futile. Their living situation was on the verge of collapse. With a decent income, thanks to my children's help, I managed to lease a nice apartment where each of my kids had their own room. A spacious room served as both a bedroom and workspace. Although the rent might be a bit high, without Bob in the picture, I was saving more than enough. My children, tired of being belittled by their father, were now living freely. Their helpfulness around the house was evident, and chores felt good without the constant criticism. Praising and thanking them for their assistance became a normal occurrence, and I was glad my children hadn't become bitter. Heading back to the apartment where my kids awaited, I initiated divorce proceedings through a lawyer. I lived on my salary while Bob spent all his earnings on himself and my mother-in-law. A valid reason for divorce in my book. Bob tried to argue against it, but my lawyer shut him down every time. His claim of being the breadwinner without contributing was labeled as verbal and financial abuse. In exchange for not seeking alimony and child support, I got custody of the kids. We agreed on no property division since the savings for the kids' college were from my earnings. Grateful that the car and house were in my name and rented, I could now focus on my job without complaints. With the money saved for college and my future earnings, I planned to support my kids in whatever they'd wanted to pursue. Today, I was determined to work hard. If you wish, we can consider divorce, but I'd like to continue living with our son. Despite John berating me extensively, he looked satisfied as he took a deep breath. I pondered how to respond, and our son, who had been waiting in the background, stepped forward. "Dad, if you don't know, let me tell you," our son said, pointing at his father's mistress. His words made me break into a cheeky smile. "My name is Jennifer. I turned 42 this year, currently working as a freelance illustrator. We've been married for 15 years, and we have a son in 8th grade. Throughout our marriage, John has jumped from job to job, not lasting very long. Most of our income comes from my work as I balance housework, raising our child, and my job. Working from home became a necessity as John took sporadic short-term jobs. Despite being a newbie in the freelance world initially, my efforts resulted in a stable income and consistent work. Referrals from former clients led to new projects, and I now illustrate educational magazines and brochures. With David growing up, I managed to work from home and go out for work a few times a week. The three of us lived harmoniously, but John's lack of direction troubled me. At 44, he seemed content with his aimless life, rarely working full-time. Despite having free time, he didn't contribute much to housework or child raising. John's disinterest in our son David, who was entering his challenging teenage years, frustrated me. David, although not very talkative, occasionally helped with chores without being asked. However, John showed no interest in our son and rarely assisted with household responsibilities. Lately, John had been coming home late more often, and I couldn't shake off my unease and frustration. Even on days when he claimed to be working, I suspected he might be doing something else. His sudden interest in picking up and dropping off David at his basketball club raised suspicions, as it contradicted our household rule of always having a parent handle these tasks. While I appreciated the help, something felt off, and my suspicions started to crystallize over the past few months. As I passed by the place where David goes, I decided to take a different route home for a change of scenery. While shopping near David's facility, I unexpectedly spotted John, who wasn't supposed to be there. He had claimed he'd be late tonight due to out-of-town work. To my surprise, he was chatting happily with a woman who appeared to be one of the staff members from the basketball facility. A sense of unease washed over me as I observed the two of them. The woman noticed me and tilted her head, asking, "Excuse me, are you David's mom?" I reluctantly confirmed, and she thanked me for my son being in her care. Awkwardly nodding, I engaged in small talk with her, curious about her role at the facility. Ignoring my husband, who seemed rigid and tense, I attempted to gather information. The woman introduced herself as Jessica, but I couldn't help but wonder why she didn't provide more details about her role with David. Ignoring my puzzled expression, my husband seemed eager to end their conversation. On the way home, we didn't speak, and he deliberately avoided eye contact, appearing distant. His recent late returns and eagerness to handle drop-offs and pickups, combined with his strange behavior after being spotted, fueled my suspicions. I couldn't shake the feeling that Jessica had something to do with it. As we walked home, I wondered if he was having an affair with this younger woman. In my heart, I sensed a change since he began doing the drop-offs and pickups. He had become noticeably distant, and when I inquired about his behavior, our son responded curtly, displaying annoyance. Chasing after our reluctant son and forcing him to the facility every day felt wrong. My suspicions grew, and soon they were confirmed. One day, as I casually dropped by, Jessica found excuses to visit our home more frequently. While she mentioned our son, it became clear that it was just a pretext. She always appeared when my husband was home, not me or our son. Watching them cheerfully converse in the living room, I was certain of John's infidelity. A month after noticing odd behavior, my husband began coming home later and occasionally leaving for days. When I jokingly remarked about his late return, suggesting he spare me the cheating, he abruptly stood up and glared at me. "Just stick to your work. I'm taking care of David, so don't pry into it unnecessarily," he retorted before leaving the living room with a sigh. I seethed with anger at being told as if he was handling everything, when in reality, he had left all the housework and the responsibility of taking care of David to me. My frustration surfaced during one of our petty disputes, and David, who had been silently observing, finally spoke up. "What's the matter, Mom?" David questioned, having noticed the tension. Trying to downplay it, I asked about him and why he was up at that hour. David, stepping out of his room, stared at me before hesitantly sharing his observations about a female staff member he suspected to be his father's mistress. According to David, this woman, Jessica, would frequently approach him at the facility, annoying him with her clinginess. He felt frustrated that she had started coming to our house, a sentiment I shared. It was evident that my son disliked having someone from his basketball club imposing on our home, providing me with a sense of relief. However, the problem persisted. Returning home from a client meeting, I heard cheerful conversation in the living room, the voices of John and Jessica. David was noticeably absent, holed up in his room. Upon entering the living room, both John and Jessica turned their eyes toward me. Jessica, with unwavering confidence, greeted me. "Welcome back, David's mom." "I ran into John, so he invited me in," Jessica said, addressing my husband by his name, a fact that deeply unsettled me. Attempting sarcasm, I inquired about her frequent meetings with John, to which she responded with a smug face, claiming it was part of her job. Her audacity continued as she pointed out the deficiencies in my housekeeping, expressing that the house felt cozy but lacked thorough cleaning. My husband didn't rebuff her comments and even chuckled along, seemingly siding with Jessica. Although I worked from home, I felt self-conscious about not keeping up with housework. However, if he contributed more to chores and childcare, it wouldn't be an issue. Feeling mocked and ridiculed, unable to bear the tension, I hastily left the living room for the bedroom, still holding my belongings. Frustration, sadness, and embarrassment overwhelmed me. I feared that Jessica might eventually take over my place in the family. Even after that encounter, my husband and Jessica continued their outings, displaying their relationship in front of me, leaving me speechless. I later learned from others that they often met under the guise of discussing my son's education, further deepening my sense of betrayal. Realizing the need for evidence during my husband's frequent absences, I embarked on a search that uncovered undeniable proof of his infidelity. Despite his claims that we couldn't afford gifts for birthdays or anniversaries, I stumbled upon receipts from motels, upscale restaurants, and high-end watches and jewelry in his coat pocket. Even places he insisted were beyond our financial reach had receipts, suggesting he frequented them with his mistress, not his wife. While the pain of his actions cut deep, I maintained composure and continued accumulating evidence of his affairs. Though divorce crossed my mind, I resolved to endure until David graduated from high school. Yet I vowed to gather sufficient evidence to secure a favorable position if the time for separation came. The question lingered. Where was the money for his affair coming from? As I pondered, I remembered our house's savings account for my son's college fund. A chill ran down my spine as I checked the transactions, revealing substantial withdrawals over the past few months. Shockingly, the balance had significantly decreased. The money meant for our son's education was being used for his selfish needs. The betrayal against our child overshadowed the betrayal against me as his wife. Suppressing my anger, I chose to act normal, not wanting our impressionable son to sense the brewing storm. I carried the burdens alone, trying not to burden our son who was studying diligently. However, stress took its toll, leading to small mistakes in household chores and at work. Even longtime client Mrs. Smith noticed my worn-out state, expressing concern and offering comfort. While I struggled, my husband reveled in his affair, seemingly more relaxed without my interference. Eventually, our son, David, would inevitably confront the issues within our family. Observing my downtrodden demeanor, David silently approached to help with household tasks. "I kind of know what's going on, huh?" he said, folding laundry. "Do whatever you want to do, Mom. You don't have to worry about me." His thoughtful actions, though sparing in words, warmed my heart and intensified my anger toward the traitor who touched the money reserved for our son's future. Retribution for this betrayal became a necessity. Contemplating whether to reach out to the person who had promised support, I weighed the options before me. With clenched fists, I vowed vengeance on my husband and his mistress. One evening, he suddenly announced a week-long work trip for training in another state. However, skepticism arose. The restaurant chain he worked for operated solely within our state, with no offices outside. His earlier boast about the job's perks included not having to relocate out of state. When my son casually mentioned a staff member from his club taking a week off, my husband's startled expression raised suspicions. Despite his initial pride in discussing the intense training, he grew silent and stared anxiously at his smartphone. Since confirming his infidelity, I had been monitoring both him and Jessica. A private investigator revealed that Jessica, working at the basketball facility, also had a week off. Aware that their business trip was a cover for a romantic getaway, I refrained from catching them red-handed, opting for a more strategic plan. Having planned something since discovering their intentions, I coordinated with my son, who was now on board. On the day of their trip, I bid farewell to my unsuspecting husband. My son and I, aided by relatives, began cleaning and packing. The plan was to move out while he was away and stay elsewhere until finding a new home. Supported by relatives angered by his actions yet concerned for David. To prevent my husband's access to our savings account, I transferred the remaining money to my personal account. While making preparations, I couldn't leave his belongings behind and decided to send them to a specific location with Mrs. Smith's consent. A few days after moving, my phone rang with my husband in a panic, requesting money during his supposed training. Declining, I confronted him about the account he usually withdrew from. The frantic voice of Jessica in the background signaled their financial desperation. The next day, my son and I headed to a specific location, a magnificent mansion with a well-maintained garden. Inside, we found my cheating husband and his mistress, sitting on the floor, apologizing to Mrs. Smith. She, with a stern expression, was not just a longtime client, but also the principal of the middle school attended by my son, forging a close relationship over the years. We confide in each other with our personal troubles. I'm deeply sorry for the trouble caused by my husband. In truth, it's my daughter's fault that all of this happened. It turned out that Jessica, who was on a trip with my husband, was questioned by her parents about a package she received at home and had no choice but to return immediately. Naturally, she insisted that my husband accompany her. Upon hearing Mrs. Smith's words, my husband began to shake in fear. Mrs. Smith had always been concerned about my declining health after learning about John's affair. When I finally confided in her about the affair and she discovered that the mistress was her daughter, she was utterly devastated. Despite this, Mrs. Smith wanted to make amends for her daughter's actions and had been cooperating with me ever since. Pointing at the piles of boxes, she sternly reprimanded her daughter, expressing her disappointment. "You should be ashamed of yourself for always wanting what isn't yours." Mrs. Smith scolded her daughter sternly. Her daughter attempted to defend herself, claiming it was a misunderstanding, but Mrs. Smith wouldn't hear it. She insisted on an apology, promising consequences for her daughter's actions. Ignoring Jessica's hysterics, I turned my attention to my silent husband standing beside her. "Don't you have something to say to me?" I asked sharply, prompting David, who had been standing behind me, to step forward. "She's not a regular staff there, just an intern at the club," David interjected firmly, addressing Jessica directly. "And don't you ever try to get all chummy with me again. Always flirting with men. It's disgusting." As my son spoke, it became clear that Jessica hadn't been officially hired at the club, contrary to my husband's belief. He had thought she was experienced in student education or activities, which was laughable considering her actual status. Their exchange revealed hidden truths, and as I looked at the stunned Jessica, it seemed that they both had their secrets. Before leaving, I felt compelled to offer Jessica a piece of advice. "Did you know that I pay for the rent, living expenses, and even David's tuition fees? This man, John, has been working odd jobs for years. You think he's okay?" Jan, with a face drained of color, attempted to interject, but it was too late. Jessica was so shocked by the revelation that she collapsed on the spot. From what I could tell, John had been acting as if he had plenty of money to spare, hiding the fact that I was the breadwinner of the family to save face in Jessica's eyes. I seemed like a lazy bum who neither worked nor took care of household chores properly. Mrs. Smith was left devastated, facing the harsh reality presented by my husband and Jessica. After David and I happily returned home, it appeared that John was kicked out of Mrs. Smith's house. Looking defeated with Jessica and a load of stuff, months passed since the move. On Mrs. Smith's advice, I decided to leave my divorce process to a competent lawyer. Thanks to professional assistance, all the complicated procedures went smoothly, bringing me relief. I heard that the savings I had set aside for David's education could also be added to the claim as child support. As for Jessica, rumors spread quickly at the basketball club about her affair with a student's parent, leading to her dismissal from the job. Seeking help from her parents, Jessica found Mrs. Smith unwilling to assist, leaving her lost and confused. Despising a man without money, she spat out words of disdain and abandoned John. Despite John's attempts at reconciliation, neither David nor I were willing to agree. Mrs. Smith felt terribly guilty for her daughter's role in ruining a family. I held the downcast principal's hand and said, "Let's keep working together." I'm truly grateful for the principal, thanks to whom I found a new job. Work has been going smoothly, and life with just David and me is filled with hope. David's joyful smile touched my heart as he casually expressed, "The job you do, Mom, is really amazing. You're the mom I'm proud of." Looking at a magazine featuring my illustrations, I discreetly wiped a tear from my eye. I want to keep pursuing my career as an illustrator, but above all, I want to work even harder for my precious David.